Zhang Shi and the others might not have been aware of the secret hidden within Sage Kuei's sculpture, but Zhang Xian was well aware of it. The upper body of Vicious, the formidable otherworldly demon, who had fought on equal grounds with Kong Shi back in his prime, was sealed within the sculpture. Back then, after he found that Vicious' upper body was stored in the sculpture with the Library of Heaven's Path, he had intended to smash that sculpture into bits to retrieve the upper body. But in the end, he had forced himself to calm down and decided against it. No matter what, he was still a master teacher, and the head of the Sanctum of Sages. Even if it was to achieve his goals, he had to take note of how he went around doing it. In any case, for the otherworldly demons to barge into the inner sanctum and take only Sage Kuei's sculpture, there was no doubt that it had something to do with Vicious' upper body. No matter what, Vicious was still one of the strongest otherworldly demon emperors, so there were bound to be many uses for his upper body. In fact, one could even seek to revive Vicious through awakening and gathering his missing parts. Vicious, hearing Zhang Xian's mumblings, Zhang Shi was taken aback. It's nothing," Zhang Xian quickly replied. "How many people were there? What cultivation realm were they at?" "There are 4 of them. I couldn't see through their cultivation realm, but they were able to breach the guardian formation of the Sanctum of Sages easily. We weren't able to stop them at all," Zhang Shi said in embarrassment. The Sanctum of Sages was the #1 academy of the Master Teacher continent, but its defenses had actually been breached twice within the short span of half a month. It had been their sanctum head the first time around, so it still was not too embarrassing. But to think that even the otherworldly demons would successfully take their possessions. To be honest, they were even hesitant about reporting this to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters. It was simply too humiliating. There were 4 of them. Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes. Where did they escape to? That direction. We ended up losing them after chasing them for a while, so we could only send a message to ask for your help, Zhang Shi replied as he pointed in a certain direction. It's fine, I understand. For the time being, focus on repairing the collapsed buildings and restoring the formation, Zhang Xian instructed as he gazed deeply in the direction that Zhang Shi had pointed out. Meanwhile, I'll see if I can get Sage Kuei's sculpture back. The theft of Sage Kuei's sculpture didn't just concern the dignity of the Sanctum of Sages. More importantly, Vicious' upper body was at stake. If he could not get it back, even though he had not officially been inaugurated yet, he would still be shamed for his incompetence. Through his deep comprehension of space, Zhang Xian was able to flit extremely quickly. In just 10 breaths or so, he had already covered a distance of over 10,000 li. He glanced backward and saw that Luo Ruoxin was still following closely behind him. With a grim look on his face, he activated the Eye of Insight and began scanning his surroundings carefully in order to find the trail of the assailants. That won't work. Luo Ruoxin shook her head. There's a good chance that the 4 assailants are the 4 young men that we met earlier at the White Creek Mountain. They are all sempiternal realm experts, and they possess special means to erase their trail. You won't be able to track them unless your Eye of Insight reaches the 4th realm. You're right. Zhang Xian had noticed that as well. At the crime scenes where Zhao Ye and the others had been kidnapped, the culprits did not leave any marks behind either. Even with the keen Eye of Insight, he had not been able to find anything at all. However, they won't be getting away that easy this time around. Zhang Xian sneered coldly. With a flick of his wrist, a book emanating an air of inviolability materialized in his hand. It was the Book of Heaven's Path. It might have been difficult for him to locate Zhao Ye and the others, but Sage Kuei's sculpture was a different matter. As long as Vicious could sense the general direction that his upper body had been taken to, he would be able to determine a general location and eventually find them. Unless they were to use some kind of unique spatial secret art to conceal the whereabouts of the upper body. However, considering that it had not been too long since they snatched the sculpture, it was unlikely that they would have the time to do it yet. Luo Ruoxin glanced at the book that Zhang Xian had taken out, but she did not say a word. Little Vicious, time to wake up. I need you to sense where your upper body is. Zhang Xian patted the book. Vicious twitched a little upon hearing his new nickname, but he still swiftly got to action. After sensing for a moment, He pointed the Book of Heaven's path in a certain direction and said, "That way." "All right." Heaving a sigh of relief, Zhang Xian quickly flitted in the direction pointed out by Vicious. Luo Ruoxin also followed close behind him. They traveled for roughly 5 minutes before Vicious spoke up once more. "They are in the city ahead of us. Shit. I can't sense my upper body anymore." Zhang Xian quickly looked in front of him and saw a city just ahead. The city was massive. In terms of scale, it was comparable to the massive Alliance Empire city. "You can't sense your upper body anymore? What do you mean?" Zhang Xian frowned. "It feels like my body has been taken into some kind of barrier. I could still sense it a moment ago, but all of a sudden, the connection vanished without a trace," Vicious replied. "Brought into some kind of barrier?" Zhang Xian's complexion did not look too good. He had chased the enemy as quickly as he could, but he was still a step too late. If only he had successfully tracked them down before they hit themselves, he might have just been able to take down all of them at once. Unfortunately, the enemy moved quicker than he had expected. It would be truly difficult for him to find the enemy in the midst of the massive city before him, without any clues to lead him along. "Do you still remember the location where the connection with your upper body vanished?" Zhang Xian asked. Vicious pondered for a moment before replying. "I can only deduce the rough location. Lead the way," Zhang Xian instructed, knowing that there was no time to be lost. To be honest, he could not have cared less about the loss in reputation for him and the sanctum of sages. The crucial thing was really Vicious' upper body. Firstly, it would be dangerous if such a powerful weapon fell into the hands of the enemy. Secondly, if he could acquire the upper body, he would be able to enhance Vicious' strength. Vicious' fighting prowess had been rather lackluster recently, but there was no denying that Vicious had been a reliable ally for a very long time. Just the heart, a finger, and the head together had already granted Vicious strength comparable to a Saint 8 Dan cultivator. If he fused together with his upper body too, would his fighting prowess not immediately surpass the level of a great sage? In fact, he might even reach the level of ancient sage. After all, that was his entire upper body. Of course, there was no way that Zhang Xian would pass on the opportunity to gain an ancient sage subordinate. That would be the strongest trump card that he could ever wish for. Under Vicious' lead, it did not take long for them to reach the center of the city. "I think it was around here that I lost connection with my upper body. My estimate could be off though," Vicious said awkwardly. As an expert who had once dominated the master-teacher continent, it was truly shameful that he was unable to find even his own body parts right now. Hearing those words, Zhang Xian frowned. "What is the degree of error for your estimate?" The center of this massive city was filled with countless resplendent residences and manors. If they had to comb every nook and cranny of the area, the enemy would have probably slipped away again by the time they found any useful clue. If Vicious could come up with a more precise area for them to comb through, it would make their work much easier. "This, roughly around 200 li," Vicious replied awkwardly. 200 li? Zhang Xian suddenly felt an urge to tear Vicious into shreds. There had to be at least 1,000,000 people within a radius of 200 li from where they were standing. To find a sculpture that was carefully hidden from the detection of spiritual perception and other tracking means within this large area, unless a miracle occurred, that was practically asking for the impossible. Knowing the impossibility of the matter as well, Vicious muttered meekly. "It suddenly vanished without a trace. If we move quickly, I might just be able to pick up its whereabouts once more." "All right, I understand," Zhang Xian replied with an exasperated sigh. Knowing that there was no better alternative at this point in time, he could only resign himself to it. Vicious' upper body was of the utmost importance to him, so he could not possibly allow it to get away without at least trying to search for it. There was a huge flowing crowd traveling in and out of the city center, be it on the streets or in the air. Zhang Xian and Luo Ruoxin did not release their Jinqi, so the others were not able to see through their cultivation either. As such, their presence did not draw too much attention from the passers-by. Otherwise, their astounding strength surely would have induced a huge commotion among the local populace. 200 li equals 100 kilometers. This should be Harvest Valley City. Located near a mountain, it enjoys the weather of eternal spring. It's the city that boasts the greatest agricultural produce, within a radius of several 100,000 li. Most of the food supply in the Sanctum of Sages originates from here. It did not take Zhang Xian long to verify their current location. Back when he was still in the Sanctum of Sages, he had browsed through quite a couple of books regarding geography. By roughly gauging the direction and distance that he had traveled from the Sanctum of Sages, he could easily deduce his current location. With a swift scan of his surroundings, Zhang Xian shook his head. It won't do to search around aimlessly like this. Let me try using the Library of Heaven's Path to verify the location. With such a thought in mind, he flicked his wrist and took out an empty book. He drew out the streets around him and wrote Sage Kuei's sculpture is in this direction. He touched the book lightly, and the Library of Heaven's Path jolted. However, a book was not compiled. It didn't work again? What's going on? Zhang Xian's complexion turned awful. Just what in the world was happening to the Library of Heaven's Path? It had never failed him in the past, but nowadays, it was malfunctioning more frequently than ever, as if an old machine sputtering to its death. Was it really in an urgent need of an upgrade? Well, he had indeed been using it for more than a year now. Perhaps, it was starting to lag behind his current power level, especially with how fast he had been growing stronger. No, that's not right. The Library of Heaven's Path shouldn't have failed under normal circumstances. A thought suddenly arose in Zhang Xian's mind. Unless, the sculpture is placed in a location concealed from even the view of the heavens. The previous few times that the Library of Heaven's Path had malfunctioned was probably because the individuals that he had sought to check possessed the discarnate constitution of divination, just like him and Luo Ruoxin. However, there were other means to bypass the Library of Heaven's Path as well. For example, the culprits at White Creek Mountain had resorted to some unique means that would not only conceal their trail from the eye of insight, but also the prying gazes of seers. The situation that Zhang Xian was facing at the moment was rather similar to the latter. Was it possible that some kind of unique means had been cast upon Sage Kuei's sculpture in order to prevent anyone from divining its whereabouts? If that's the case, there's only one possibility. A sharp glint flashed across Zhang Xian's eyes as he quickly scanned his surroundings. He walked up to a nearby cultivator and clasped his fist. This friend over here. May I ask where the Seer Guild of the Harvest Valley City is located? Seer Guild? It's over in that direction, roughly a 4-li building. It's shaped like a tortoise, so you don't have to worry about missing it. The cultivator was a middle-aged man who appeared to be in his mid-40s. He responded to Zhang Xian's question amicably. Many thanks. Zhang Xian clasped his fist once more. He beckoned Luo Ruoxin with a wave of his hand before flying in the direction that the middle-aged man had pointed out. Are you suspecting that a seer from the Harvest Valley City is colluding with the culprits in order to prevent other seers from divining the location of Sage Kuei's sculpture? Luo Ruoxin swiftly grasped Zhang Xian's train of thought. A normal isolation barrier might be able to prevent ordinary cultivators from tracking it, but it wouldn't be able to stop the divination of the seers. To be absolutely safe, the culprits would have to engage the help of a seer to conceal it from the view of the heavens too. Zhang Xian said with a nod. Indeed, I think you are on the right track. Luo Ruoxin nodded in agreement. While the current Sanctum of Sages did not have too many experts, it still had a 9-star seer working in its service, Master Feng. If he divined the location of the sculpture, there was a good chance that he could fathom its rough location after a couple of tries. So if the culprits wanted to make a perfect getaway, they would have to use some kind of anti-divination technique on the sculpture. In all of Harvest Valley City, there was only one group of people who were able to achieve that feat so quickly. The seers from the Seer Guild. Traveling ahead, it did not take long for the two of them to arrive before a tortoise-shaped building. There were some mysterious patterns inscribed on the surface of the building, and they seemed to wield some kind of inconceivable power that prevented even one's spiritual perception from seeping in. We'll know whether we have gotten the right place or not once we get in, Zhang Xian thought as he walked up to the entrance of the tortoise-shaped building. At this moment, however, a young man walked out and blocked his path. Please halt your footsteps. Our Harvest Valley City Seer Guild doesn't welcome any visitors. I am Zhang Xian, the head of the Sanctum of Sages. We have just lost a precious artifact, and I have specially made a trip here in the hope of engaging the help of your guild leader to help us divine its whereabouts. Zhang Xian said as he flicked his wrist and revealed his substitute Sanctum head token. You are the head of the Sanctum of Sages? Startled by the high standing of the guest before him, the young man quickly clasped his fist politely and said, Elder, please hold on for a moment. I'll report your arrival to our guild leader right away. After saying those words, the young man hurriedly rushed back into the tortoise-shaped building. Roughly 3 minutes later, a black-haired elder walked out along with the young man. Pardon me for my lacking welcome. I was unaware of your arrival, Sanctum Head Zhang. Please come in. The elder appeared to be in his 60s, and his cultivation was at St. 8 Dan Pinnacle. Wearing the long robe of the Seer Guild, his appearance gave the impression of an enlightened expert. I'll be imposing on you then. To be honest, I have come with a request that I will need to trouble you with. Zhang Xian clasped his fist politely. Sanctum Head Zhang, you are too courteous. You must be unaware of how resounding your reputation is these days. I never thought that our guild would have the honor of hosting you. Please this way, the elder said as he led the way forward. Soon they arrived in a room. As soon as they walked in, a slight frown appeared between Luo Ruoxin's brows. She quickly sent a telepathic message over. Zhang Xian, be careful. What's wrong? Zhang Xian replied discreetly. Did you notice something? This was the first time that Luo Ruoxin had sent him a telepathic message, asking him to be careful. It seemed like there was really something wrong with this Seer Guild. Luo Ruoxin appeared to want to say something, but she seemed to change her mind at the last moment. It's nothing. I just think that it would be best to proceed warily. I understand. Zhang Xian replied telepathically. It would be foolish to turn a blind eye to Luo Ruoxin's warning. Thus, Zhang Xian casually placed his hand on his waist, ready to make a move as soon as anything happened. However, it seemed like his worries might have been unfounded. Even when he walked to the middle of the room, he still did not notice any anomalies. After everyone had taken a seat, the elder raised his gaze and asked, May I know the reason behind your visit, Sanctum Head Zhang? Not too long ago, a couple of burglars snuck into our Sanctum of Sages and stole our Sage Kuei's sculpture. Following the trail of the burglars, we found that the trail abruptly ends here. Considering that we are both affiliated with the Master Teacher Pavilion, I would like to trouble you to divine the identity and whereabouts of the culprit. Zhang Xian clasped his fist. Zhang Xian's words were roundabout, but the implied meaning was very clear to those hearing his message. He was effectively saying, My item disappeared in your territory. If you can't divine the identity and the whereabouts of the culprits, I'm afraid that I'll have to doubt you. The trail of the burglars ends here? A displeased frown appeared on the elder's face. Sanctum Head Zhang, are you suspecting our Seer Guild of hiding the burglars and the stolen possession of the Sanctum of Sages? The burglars who have stolen Sage Kuei's sculpture are all otherworldly demons. However, they were able to conceal themselves perfectly, such that even my eye of insight is rendered helpless before their means. On top of that, our seers are unable to divine the whereabouts of the burglars or our missing possession. I'd hate to accuse you, but I'm afraid that I can't turn a blind eye to the evidence lying before me. Zhang Xian replied calmly. The loss of our possession is a small matter, but the involvement of the otherworldly demons in the burglary is a cause for concern. Things could turn ugly if I report this matter to the Master Teacher Pavilion, so I ask of you to give us your full support. This is the best way to cleanse your Seer Guild of suspicion. Sanctum Head Zhang, I respect you as the head of the Sanctum of Sages and the Zhang clan, and it's out of goodwill that I welcomed you into our Seer Guild. Yet, you are maligning my Seer Guild of conspiring with the otherworldly demonic tribe. The elder abruptly rose to his feet and uttered coldly, Just what do you stand to gain from besmirching the reputation of our Seer Guild? Calm down. There's no need to lose your temper here. Zhang Xian glanced at the agitated elder. I don't mean anything by those words. All I want is to retrieve the treasure that was stolen from our Sanctum of Sages. If you are truly as innocent as you claim, You won't mind me searching through your seer guild, right? If I fail to find anything, you can rest assured that I'll provide due compensation to your seer guild for my mistake. You wish to ransack our seer guild? Preposterous. Our seer guild shoulders the heavy responsibility of divining the future to protect mankind. Even the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters have to show us some respect. Yet, a mere sanctum head like you seeks to ransack our premises? The elder bellowed furiously. Seer was one of the many unique occupations in the world, but due to its unique capabilities, it was held in high regard in the Master Teacher continent. Not even the Master Teacher Pavilion would dare to exert pressure on them easily. It was one thing for the young man to accuse their seer guild of colluding with the otherworldly demonic tribe without ample evidence on hand. But to think that he would make a brazen request to ransack their premises too. This was intolerable. I don't deny that I am unqualified to request a search on your seer guild, but this matter concerns not only a treasure of the Sanctum of Sages, but the otherworldly demonic tribe as well. It might just be an unfortunate coincidence, but the trail of the burglars happens to end in the vicinity of your seer guild. With the safety of mankind at stake, I'm afraid that I have no choice but to do this. I hope that you can understand my position, Zhang Xian said. Seers usually avoid getting involved in worldly affairs, so I believe you would be reluctant to get into an unnecessary conflict. Regardless of whether I report this matter to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters or the Seer Guild headquarters, you will have a great deal of explaining to do. That wouldn't be desirable to you, right? Are you threatening me? The elder growled coldly as he clenched his fists tightly. Threaten? I am the head of the Sanctum of Sages. I would never stoop to something as low as that. However, if there is evidence to suggest that otherworldly demons who have stolen Sage Kuei's sculpture have slipped into the Seer Guild, for the safety of mankind, I believe that no one will question my judgment for demanding a search on your Seer Guild. Zhang Xian replied coolly. Ha! What amazing pomposity, this is from the head of the Sanctum of Sages. Before the elder could even respond, a cold harumph sounded from the distance, following which, two old men walked in from the side doors. Upon seeing the two old men, Zhang Xian's eyes narrowed warily. To his astonishment, he was unable to see through the cultivation of those two old men. Considering how he was currently at St. Nine Dan Pinnacle, the fact that he was unable to see through their cultivation meant that they were at great sage at the very minimum. St. Eight Dan Pinnacle should have been the limit for a city at the level of Harvest Valley City, so for two great sage cultivators to appear here simultaneously, if it was just a guess from Zhang Xian's part before, the appearance of the two old men had him convinced that something was indeed amiss in this Seer Guild. I beg your pardon if I have made you feel that way. May I know who the two of you are? I am currently addressing the leader of the Harvest Valley City Seer Guild, so I must ask the two of you to not insolently interject into our conversation and learn to hold your tongues. Zhang Xian replied imposingly. If they were great sage cultivators from other guilds, he might still hesitate a little before going up against them. But since they were seers, all it would take was a mere thought for him to teach them a lesson. They could not even be considered a threat at all. I am the vice head of the Seer Guild headquarters, Qi Zhen. The person beside me is Elder Mo Qin. The old man who had spoken earlier flung his sleeves and harumphed coldly. There's no way there could be any otherworldly demons here. And the so-called treasure of your Sanctum of Sages isn't here either. Are you satisfied now? Unfortunately, no. Zhang Xian replied coldly as he stood up and placed his hands behind his back. With an unwavering tone, he continued. Unless you allow me to search through the Harvest Valley City Seer Guild, I won't be leaving here today. You, not expecting the young man to say such words despite having revealed his identity as the vice head of the Seer Guild headquarters, Qi Zhen narrowed his eyes furiously. He lifted his hand, seemingly preparing to make a move, but his movements suddenly paused for a moment. It appeared as if someone was talking telepathically to him. The next moment, he suppressed his rage and flung his sleeves back furiously once more. Very well, you can search the premises. However, I'll only give you 3 minutes to do so. At the end of the 3 minutes, regardless of whether you have found what you are searching for or not, I'll have to ask you to leave. We still have an important ritual that we have to carry out. If we miss the right moment to make the divination, not even your sanctum of sages will be able to bear the consequences. 3 minutes. Very well. Zhang Xian nodded calmly. With a thought, he took out the Book of Heaven's Path and instructed, Vicious, scan the area and see if you are able to sense the presence of your upper body. Yes, Vicious replied. Barely a moment after he had begun searching the area, the Book of Heaven's Path abruptly shuddered a little as an anxious exclamation sounded. Master, there's something amiss here. The auras are chaotic, almost as if there's something extremely dangerous in here. Extremely dangerous? Zhang Xian frowned. For Vicious to deem the surroundings with the term extremely dangerous. Just what could be hidden within this seer guild? The feeling vanished. Did I sense wrongly? My instincts seem to have lost their sensitivity after suffering a sharp decline in my cultivation, Vicious remarked doubtfully. He was certain that he had sensed something earlier, but the feeling had vanished without a trace in an instant. While he still harbored some doubts, he could not discount the possibility that he might have made a mistake. His body still was not incomplete yet, so it was inevitable that his senses would be a little jumbled up from time to time. I see. Don't bother about the chaotic auras for the time being, and check if your upper body is around here. Zhang Xian instructed sternly. It was just earlier that Luo Ruoxin had given him a warning, and now Vicious was saying something similar. This was making him feel a little unnerved on the inside. Nevertheless, he could not back down at this point. The culprits could very well be the same as the ones who had kidnapped Zhaoya and his other students, so he could not afford to lose this lead. Not to mention, Vicious' upper body was also of the utmost importance to him too. I understand, Vicious replied. He quickly cast aside the miscellaneous thoughts in his mind and did a rough sensing of the area. A moment later he exclaimed, Master, I can sense it. My upper body is indeed here. However what? Zhang Xian was delighted to hear that they had managed to find the correct place. But this fact only introduced more doubts. For the Seer Guild to collude together with the otherworldly demonic tribe to steal Sage Kuei's sculpture, just what were they intending to achieve? There's a peculiar aura shrouding my upper body. Previously, Sage Kuei's sculpture was suppressing my upper body, so I couldn't sense it clearly. However, I can sense the presence of my upper body very distinctly now. It feels like they have destroyed the sculpture, Vicious replied. Destroyed the sculpture? It seems like they have indeed stolen Sage Kuei's sculpture for Vicious' upper body. Zhang Xian fell into deep thought. If it had just been a guess before, it was apparent to him right now that the main goal of the culprits was indeed Vicious' upper body. Furthermore, it seemed too much of a coincidence for the vice head and an elder of the Seer Guild headquarters to visit a relatively remote branch together, especially at this point in time. From the looks of it, there was a good chance that a huge number of the higher-ranking seers were colluding with the otherworldly demons. Of course, that would still require further verification, but it would be best for him to assume the worst-case scenario until then. Where is your upper body at the moment? Zhang Xian asked. It's currently at the back of this room, Vicious replied. Got it. Zhang Xian nodded as he turned his gaze over. At the back of the room was a massive door pitch black in color. He tried to extend his spiritual perception to sense what was beyond the door, but it seemed like some kind of isolation barrier had been cast over it to prevent any nosy individuals from snooping around. Thus, he made his way over with the intention of taking a closer examination. However, it was at this moment that Qi Zhen's voice sounded once more. All right, 3 minutes are up. Sanctum Head Zhang, I'll have to ask you to leave right now. Leave? Zhang Xian scoffed contemptuously. I have just confirmed that the missing treasure of our Sanctum of Sages is located behind this door. But you seem to be in a rush to chase me away. I really can't help but wonder what your intentions are. Qi Zhen's pupils dilated a little upon hearing those words, but he quickly concealed it with a cold harumph. You said that you can just confirm that your missing treasure is behind this door? How can you be certain of that? Just like how your Seer Guild has the ability to uncover vital information through divination, our Sanctum of Sages has our own ways to tracking down our possessions. If I can't even locate the whereabouts of our stolen treasures, wouldn't I be a failure of a sanctum head? Zhang Xian replied coldly. Sanctum head Zhang, I understand that you are anxious to find the treasures of your sanctum of sages, but making false accusations like that won't get you anywhere. Our seer guild has an important ritual that we have to conduct right now, and we don't have any time to waste arguing with you. I'll have to ask you to leave right now, or else don't blame us for getting nasty. Qi Zhen said with a majestic wave of his hands. Getting nasty? Are you still intending to make a move on me? Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes threateningly. Who would have thought that the Seer Guild would actually be so brazen? It was one thing for them to collude with the otherworldly demonic tribe to steal Sage Kuei's sculpture, but to think that they would even dare to threaten him, the head of the Sanctum of Sages. We don't wish for it to come to that. However, if you continue making a scene, I'm afraid that we'll have no choice but to forcefully evict you. Qi Zhen replied coldly as a belligerent aura burst forth from his body, rising straight into the heavens. He was a great sage Dan Aureate body realm expert. While he might have been lacking in comparison to Sword Saint Xing, the prowess that he wielded was more than enough to deal with a Saint 9 Dan pinnacle cultivator like him. Voila! Seeing that Qi Zhen was intending to make a move, Zhang Xian's hands moved for the Dragonbone Divine Spear wrapped around his waist, prepared to retaliate should the other party make any move of aggression. However, an explosion suddenly erupted at that moment, and the tortoiseshell-shaped roof burst open. A figure charged in from the open roof. Wu Chun. The figure was none other than the adolescent boy following behind Luo Ruoxin, Wu Chun. The other party had claimed that he had some matters to deal with after they left ancient sage Ranqiu's ancient domain back at the White Creek Mountain. Why would he suddenly appear here? Attack! In Zhang Xian's brief days, Qi Zhen released a deafening bellow. Together with the elder of the Seer Guild headquarters, Mo Qin, he charged right for Wu Chun in the air. Humph! Wu Chun harumphed disdainfully as he thrust his palm downward in retaliation. Kacha! The surrounding space froze. Before Qi Zhen and Mo Qin could even react, they were already struck squarely on their chest, causing them to fall heavily onto the ground as blood spurted forth from their mouths wildly. Despite being great Sage 2 Dan experts, they were still far too lacking in comparison to Wu Chun. TSS La. Wu Chun did not seem to have noticed Zhang Xian and Luo Ruoxin's presence. After knocking down the two old men, he thrust his palm once more toward the room at the back, where Vicious' upper body was supposedly located. The space around the room at the back immediately collapsed, causing the ceiling to be destroyed. Whoa! At that moment, a brush flew forth from the sinking ceiling and struck the collapsed space above. Following which, a sharp sound echoed in the air, and spatial ripples diffused into the surroundings. It's those 4 otherworldly demons. Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes in astonishment. That brush that had just flown forth was extremely familiar to him. It was one of the artifacts of the 4 otherworldly demons that he had met in ancient sage Ranqiu's ancient domain. He had not thought that he would meet them here once more. It seemed like after separating from them, Wu Chun had somehow managed to track them down here. I should make a move too, Zhang Xian thought. He grabbed the belt wrapped around his waist and whipped out the Dragonbone Divine Spear. After which he darted toward the sky. Ding 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 ding. After a few metallic clangs, Zhang Xian was forced to retreat with a pale face. Without igniting Kong Shi's blood droplet, he was simply no match for those 4 young men. Voila! While Zhang Xian was being forced back, a ferocious bellow reverberated from beneath. The scholarly young man charged forth from his hiding place, and with a flick of his wrist, a long sword materialized in his hand. With the support of the demonic tune and the brush, he launched a decisive assault toward Wu Chun. A furious barrage of sword chi filled the sky above the Seer Guild. One could not help but feel blinded by the dense congregation of sword chi, almost as if the sword was the only existence in the world. As the surrounding air moaned under the intense pressure from the barrage of sword chi, black dimension rifts were forcefully ripped open all around. The scholarly young man had used his full strength right from the start. Even compared to the time when Zhang Xian had clashed with him in ancient sage Ranqiu's ancient domain, he seemed to be significantly stronger than before. But as powerful as the scholarly young man was, Wu Chun was even stronger. Humph! Wu Chun harumphed coldly. Without the slightest hint of panic, he thrust his palm downward once more. The black dimension rifts scattered around began repairing at a visible pace, and the seemingly indomitable scholarly young man suddenly froze in the air with his sword. Shockingly, he was actually unable to press forward at all. What formidable prowess! Zhang Xian complimented with widened eyes. He truly did not expect Wu Chun to be so powerful. Even if he had ignited Kong Shi's blood droplet, it was unlikely that he would have been able to cope with the offense of the scholarly young man any better than Wu Chun. Hula! Another explosion sounded within the seer guild beneath, and several more figures charged toward Wu Chun. Along with the appearance of those figures, blood-curdling killing intent settled into the surrounding air, leaving one feeling as if one had plunged into the midst of a harsh battlefield. They are all otherworldly demons. Zhang Xian's body stiffened in astonishment. He did not expect so many otherworldly demons to appear all at once. Furthermore, they did not even make any attempt to conceal themselves. No, it's because this is the Seer Guild. Not only will it conceal their auras, it will also conceal them from the peering eyes of the heavens. Naturally, there's no need for them to conceal their identities at all. Zhang Xian nodded in realization. Back when they were still at ancient sage Ranqiu's ancient domain, they still had to disguise themselves a little. Otherwise, if the prime amulet had figured out their true identity and attempted to suppress them, they could have faced serious problems. On the other hand, as long as they ensured that no survivors walked out of the Seer Guild alive, no one would be any wiser about their true identity. Activate. Knowing that any hesitation at this moment could very well cost their lives, Zhang Xian immediately ignited the final droplet of Kong Shi's blood. It was his greatest trump card, which was why he was a little reluctant to use it. However, he knew that if he did not make a move right now, and Wu Chun fell victim to them, he and Luo Ruoxin could very well be next. Hung Long Long. As soon as Kong Shi's blood droplet was ignited, Zhang Xian immediately felt overwhelming strength wrapping around his body, bringing his fighting prowess to a whole new level. Wielding the Dragonbone Divine Spear in hand, he charged toward the closest otherworldly demon to him. Die! Without any hesitation, he pushed his spear right for the otherworldly demon's vitals. It was due to his hesitation that those 4 young men had escaped the previous time. This time, he would not allow history to repeat itself. Roar! Caught off guard by the sudden emergence of such a powerful foe, the otherworldly demon had no choice but to forcefully twist his body and divert his attack on Wu Chun to defending against Zhang Xian. An air of malicious intent rushed toward Zhang Xian, and the otherworldly demon swiftly swept its claw toward him. Whoosh! But given Zhang Xian's current prowess, how could he possibly allow the otherworldly demon to do as he pleased? He swiftly adjusted the trajectory of his spear to pierce right through the otherworldly demon's claw, before thrusting right into the depths of the latter's heart. While his spear was still lodged into the otherworldly demon's body, he forcefully jolted it around. PSH. The next instant, the otherworldly demon's body exploded, collapsing into a lump of meat. Just like that, a great sage for Dan Sempiternal Realm expert met his end. Roar! 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 Seeing their companions losing his life in the blink of an eye, the remaining otherworldly demons were visibly stunned for an instant. Perhaps out of realization that Zhang Xian posed the greatest threat to them, a handful of them immediately changed their target and focused their assault on him. Humph! With narrowed eyes, Zhang Xian flicked his spear with a single hand. It warped into a majestic dragon and charged for the closest otherworldly demon to it. At the same time, he snapped his finger lightly with his other free hand. Freeze! Voila! As if the surrounding space had been frozen solid, everything around the Seer Guild suddenly halted. The assailing otherworldly demons did not expect Zhang Xian to possess such a technique. As soon as they realized that they were outmatched, they immediately tried to turn around and flee. But it was already too late. The space around them was sealed, and they could not move an inch anymore. Kacha! The spear pierced right through the head of the closest otherworldly demon. It was instantaneous death. However, due to the frozen space, Its body continued floating quietly in the air eerily. With 2 otherworldly demons slain, the burden on Wu Chen lessened considerably. He launched 2 consecutive palm strikes, sending the scholarly young man flying with the first, and destroying the zither of the fragile young man with the second. Wang. At this moment, a skeletal structure of an upper body rose into the air. It was hard to determine what kind of material the upper body was made of, but the ribcage had a crystal-clear transparency to it, reminiscent of top-quality jade. Instead of overpowering killing intent, it had an academic air to it. "Master, it's my upper body," Vicious exclaimed anxiously. "It's finally out." Seeing that Vicious' upper body was indeed here, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Without any hesitation, he flicked his wrist, and the Book of Heaven's path flew right toward the upper body. Hula! It took barely an instant for the Book of Heaven's path to seal the upper body within it. It had been much more troublesome with Vicious' head and finger, because they already possessed independent thought. On the other hand, the many years of suppression under Sage Kuei within the Sanctum of Sages had completely purified Vicious' upper body, removing any hint of consciousness from it. As such, it did not take much effort for the Book of Heaven's path to seal it. Witnessing this scene, Wu Chen's eyebrows shot up in astonishment. "Ha ha ha, I am going to make a breakthrough. Master, I'm going into hibernation. You must take care of yourself." Vicious roared with laughter, and slowly, his voice faded away. Hula! Zhang Xian could feel Vicious' consciousness falling into a deep slumber. It was probably the same as many times before. Assimilating his upper body was probably a highly exhausting activity that required him to go into hibernation. He should be able to make a breakthrough to Great Sage once it awakes once more. Zhang Xian heaved a sigh inwardly. While all this was being done, his body had not been slacking around. He decisively drove his spear into the body of another otherworldly demon, intending to kill him as well. However, at that moment, a devastating aura suddenly gushed forth from the Seer Guild, and it rose right into the clouds. This aura was so ridiculously powerful that it felt almost as if it could even flip the heavens upside down. Could this be an ancient sage? Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes in shock. The ignition of Kong Shi's blood droplet would have granted him strength invincible to those beneath ancient sage, but in the face of the ridiculously overpowered aura rising from the Seer Guild, he felt like an ant standing before an elephant. He could not even fathom just how powerful the individual commanding such an aura would be. Probably, this was the level of strength that only the ancient sages that he had heard so much about commanded. Alarmed, he quickly turned his sights in the direction of the aura, only to see a hulking otherworldly demon charging toward Luo Ruoxin at an absurd speed. Dread and panic exploded in Zhang Xian's mind as he roared in agitation. "Ruoxin, careful! If the ancient sage otherworldly demon really got to Luo Ruoxin, she would die without the slightest hint of doubt. Who could have known that an ancient sage would actually be hiding in the Seer Guild? And he was an otherworldly demon at that. Just what in the world could the otherworldly demonic tribe be planning? Damn it! Damn it! No. Zhang Xian could not tell if it was a scream in his mind, or one that he had actually voiced out. But his entire existence was telling him that he could not allow whatever was going to happen. Who? A book flew forth from his glabella. Pada! It descended right upon on the ancient sage otherworldly demon, charging toward Luo Ruoxin. What? Paji! With a horrified look on his face, the ancient sage otherworldly demon was smashed right into the ground, breathing his last breath. Even at the moment of his death, he probably could not have imagined that someone as powerful as him would actually meet his end under the weight of a book. Silence rippled across the entire battlefield. Even Wu Chen and the scholarly young man were startled, resulting in a temporary halt of their battle. All eyes were gathered on the otherworldly demon smashed into the ground, and not a mouth could find any words to say. Every single one of them had sensed the surging aura earlier, and for the first time in many years, an ancient sage existence had made his appearance. Yet he had only managed to say a single word. What? Before meeting his end. This was too shocking. Ancient sages were the pinnacle existences of the master-teacher continent. While it would be an exaggeration to say that they were indestructible, their life force was so resilient that most of them managed to live till the end of their time. Yet, right before their eyes, an ancient sage just had his physical body and primordial spirit completely smashed into bits, destroying any chance of survival through and through. What in the world was going on? When in the world did ancient sage become so fragile, shattering at a simple touch? Or rather, what in the world was that book? Where in the world did that fellow obtain that book from? And could that book still be used? With a pale face and a trembling body, the scholarly young man bellowed anxiously, "Retreat!" An attack that even an ancient sage was unable to withstand. There was no way that they would stand a chance against that. With horrified expressions, the otherworldly demons each tore apart an amulet, and dimension rifts appeared around them. "Where do you think you're going?" Zhang Xian sneered coldly as he raised his hand, intending to seal the space around them to prevent their retreat. But before he could do anything, a voice sounded in his head. "Let them go." He quickly turned his gaze over to Luo Ruoxin, only to see the latter shaking her head with a deep frown between her brows. Zhang Xian hesitated for a moment, but he still decided to heed Luo Ruoxin's instructions. Wang, Wang, Wang. Spatial disturbances rippled across the area as the scholarly young man and the others who had ripped an amulet apart vanished into dimension rifts, leaving only Qi Zhen and the others from the Seer Guild behind. Knowing that it would be nigh impossible to catch them once they had gotten away, Zhang Xian took a deep breath and asked the young lady beside him, "Why?" He knew that his girlfriend was not a person to do things without reason, so she was bound to have her motive for asking him to let them go. It was also in view of this that he had chosen to heed her instruction. "You wouldn't have been able to stop them if they really wanted to get away," Luo Ruoxin replied calmly. "Even if I can't stop them from getting away, I would at least be able to kill another one of them," Zhang Xian replied with clenched fists. Considering how his enemies were all sempiternal realm cultivators, while it might have taken some time, they would still have been able to undo his spatial seal eventually. From such a perspective, their escape was inevitable. Nevertheless, using the time that they spent on breaking his spatial seal, he was confident that he would have been able to slay at least one more otherworldly demon. Killing another otherworldly demon wouldn't have made much of a difference, Luo Ruoxin said grimly. More importantly, there wasn't just a single ancient sage here earlier. Those words caused Zhang Xian's pupils to dilate in horror, as he suddenly realized how close he had come to death earlier. "You are saying that there were more ancient sages hiding in this Seer Guild other than the one I killed?" "There were at least 3 more of them. However, it seems like that decisive blow shocked them. Knowing that they don't have the strength to withstand the might of your book, they chose to flee. However, if you tried to stop them, they could have launched a counterattack out of desperation. Even if it's you, I don't think that you have the means to deal with 3 ancient sages simultaneously yet," Luo Ruoxin said. Zhang Xian fell silent. He had used his only golden page earlier, which had been triggered from Luo Xuanqing's gratitude from the impartation of the simplified Heaven's Path spatial sealing art. He had already used it on one of the ancient sages, and if another ancient sage had really appeared then, there would have been nothing that he could have done that could have really spelled the end of all of them. While it was true that the crushed ancient sage had met his end even before he could display his true prowess, Zhang Xian could tell from the aura that the other party had emanated that he would not have stood a chance at all in a proper duel. In fact, just the overwhelming aura emanated by the ancient sages would have been enough to subdue him. It was not without reason that ancient sages were so revered in the world. Without absolute strength, there was no way they could possess so much influence. After calming down from the shock of just how close he had come to death, a doubt arose in Zhang Xian's mind. How did so many otherworldly demon ancient sages manage to sneak into the Master-Teacher continent without alarming the Master-Teacher pavilion? It was true that most human ancient sages were in hibernation. However, based on what he knew, the human ancient sages seemed to have some way of sensing hostile ancient sages. It was through such a system that they have been able to protect mankind from the threat of the otherworldly demon ancient sages over the past millenniums. So, it should have been impossible for the Master-Teacher Pavilion to remain oblivious to the arrival of so many otherworldly demon ancient sages on the Master-Teacher continent. Unless the entire Master-Teacher Pavilion had betrayed mankind. As if seeing through the doubts Zhang Xian harbored, Wuxia explained, "It's likely the doing of the Seer Guild headquarters. They use some kind of secret art to conceal the presence of these ancient sages, thus allowing them to slip past the detection of the Master-Teacher Pavilion and the human ancient sages. Furthermore, they ingeniously chose Harvest Valley City as their base of operations. It's an inconspicuous city, located at a safe distance away from the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters and most major powers. More importantly, there is no Master-Teacher Pavilion in the vicinity to curb the local Seer Guild, thus making it an ideal location for a hideout without incurring any suspicion." Hearing those words, Zhang Xian fell into deep thought. Harvest Valley City was located against a mountain, making it a natural fortress. On top of that, it was located against a stream, which provided it with the water required to irrigate the fertile land around it. With such advantageous conditions, it was able to swiftly develop into an independent power, reminiscent to that of the Zhang clan and the Luo clan. Perhaps it was to prevent external powers from interfering excessively in its local affairs. But for many generations, the general populace had vehemently objected to any external powers taking root within the city, and this included the Master-Teacher Pavilion. As a result, it had become one of the very few places without a Master-Teacher Pavilion branch. For this reason, it was the ideal location for the otherworldly demons to hide in. But even if the Seer Guild is helping to conceal the presence of these otherworldly demons, the otherworldly demons would still have to slip past ancient sage Qiu Wu's seal in the subterranean gallery in order to get to the Master-Teacher continent. Every subterranean gallery is tightly guarded by Master Teachers. So isn't it ridiculous for so many otherworldly demons to be able to slip through? Zhang Xian asked. I found that rather weird too. I have been investigating this matter since parting with you and Milady, but I'm still unable to figure out the reason behind that. Isn't the answer to that obvious? Luo Ruoxin suddenly interjected. There's someone within the Master-Teacher Pavilion helping them. Zhang Xian's body jolted upon hearing those words. In truth, he had also arrived at the answer himself, but he simply dared not believe it. In order to pull something like that off, the person or group colluding with the otherworldly demons had to be of considerably high standing within the Master-Teacher Pavilion. Who could they be? Why would they choose to betray mankind? It's very likely that the otherworldly demons were aiming for Vicious upper body this time around. Considering how anxious they were to find the upper body, willingly taking the risk of traveling over to the Master-Teacher continent, there's a good chance that they have already amassed Vicious other body parts. Zhang Xian thought grimly. It was one thing for the otherworldly demons to be amassing Vicious body parts, but Zhang Xian did not feel that their motives were that simple. Even if Vicious was one of the strongest otherworldly demon emperor in history, surely they would not need so many ancient sages to personally supervise the operation of stealing back his upper body. Most likely, those ancient sages were there for a different purpose, but that purpose was not something that he could figure out at the moment. In any case, it seems like I'll have to tread warily around the Master-Teacher Pavilion in the future. Zhang Xian had been intending to report this matter to the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters, but given the current circumstances, it would be better to put it off for the time being. He had never been to the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters personally, so he could not be sure whom he could trust. If the information fell into the wrong hands, it could possibly lead to a disastrous outcome. For one, those traitors could twist the facts against him if they deemed him a threat. The situation was currently rather volatile, so it would be best for him to lie low for the time being. It seems like even the Master-Teacher Pavilion isn't trustworthy anymore. I have to swiftly unite all of the powers that I have at the moment. The Zhang clan, the Luo clan, the Sanctum of Sages, the Combat Master Hall. Zhang Xian thought with an awful complexion. We are simply too vulnerable to the otherworldly demonic tribe at the moment. No one would have expected the otherworldly demonic tribe to have spies within the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters as well. Without knowing whom to trust, Zhang Xian could only rely on himself. For the time being, he could only try to unite all of the powers that he had at his disposal and pray that the invasion of the otherworldly demonic tribe would not come too soon. Zhang Xian, the corpse of an ancient sage is filled with treasures. This fellow might have barely stepped into the level of an ancient sage, but his corpse still has many useful materials that you can use, Luo Ruoxin suddenly said. Treasure. It was then that Zhang Xian suddenly remembered that on top of claiming vicious upper body, he had also managed to kill an ancient sage. The body of an ancient sage was deeply coveted even as a corpse. Zhang Xian's eyes lit up in excitement as he pondered about what he could do with the dead ancient sage's body. If I could forge his corpse into a soulless metal humanoid, I would have another trump card at my disposal. Having inherited the heritage of the soul oracles, he knew the method to forging soulless metal humanoids. If he were to use the corpse of this ancient sage as the foundation and successfully forged a soulless metal humanoid out of it, wouldn't he be able to command the fighting prowess of an ancient sage just by slipping his soul into it? If that were to happen, he wouldn't have to fear anyone anymore. This had really come at a timely moment. It just happened that he had expended his final droplet of Kong Shi's blood essence and his newly acquired golden page, and he was lacking a suitable trump card to use in times of distress. If he could forge the corpse into a soulless metal humanoid, this problem would be resolved. It's truly a treasure. I'll be taking it then. Seeing that Luo Ruoxin and Wu Chen had no intention of laying claim to the ancient sage's body, Zhang Xian waved his hand to keep the corpse into his storage ring. But to his shock, he found that it was as if he was attempting to move a mountain. Even as he was on the verge of expending all of his soul energy, the ancient sage corpse still refused to budge at all. What's going on? Zhang Xian frowned in confusion. No matter what, his soul cultivation was at St. Nine Dan pinnacle. Along with his comprehension of space, it simply didn't make sense how he was unable to move a mere corpse over to his storage ring. Let me try moving it physically, Zhang Xian thought as he wrapped the corpse with his jinqi and tugged at it. Despite using his full strength, the corpse still didn't move an inch at all. One must know that his power enhancement from Kong Shi's blood droplet hadn't ended yet, which meant to say that the strength he wielded was still invincible beneath ancient sage. Upon reaching Great Sage 2 Dan Oriat body realm, a cultivator's body would gain significant weight, allowing him to stand his ground firmly regardless of the opponent he was standing against. Beyond that, if a cultivator were to make a breakthrough to Ancient Sage 2, his body would be further tempered to become even denser and more resilient. It would be impossible for those beneath Ancient Sage to leave a mark on an Ancient Sage corpse, let alone kill a living Ancient Sage. It's also due to this reason that Ancient Sages are known to be particularly troublesome to deal with. Seeing the look on Zhang Xian's face, Luo Ruoxin couldn't help but chuckle softly. Doesn't that mean that it's impossible for me to keep this ancient sage corpse into my storage ring? Zhang Xian asked with a stifled look on his face. He was still intending to forge the corpse into a soulless metal humanoid to serve as one of his trump cards. However, if he couldn't even lift its body, how could he hope to control it? It would have been impossible for you to lift its body under normal circumstances. But your dragon-owned divine spear happens to be an ancient sage artifact. While its strength has been sealed, it should still be able to move the corpse over to your storage ring, Luo Ruoxin said. You're right. Zhang Xian slapped his forehead in realization. How did he forget about this matter? His strength might be lacking at the moment, but the Dragonbone Divine Spear used to be the weapon of the strongest ancient sage Ranxiao. Even the water droplets it flung out wielded the strength to kill St. Nine Dan Pinnacle cultivators. In terms of sheer physical might, its prowess was even greater than the current him. Thus, Zhang Xian tapped the spear in his grasp, and its body immediately morphed into that of a massive dragon. It easily picked up the ancient sage corpse on the ground and moved it over into Zhang Xian's storage ring. It works. Seeing that the dragon-owned divine spear was indeed able to do it, Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. With this matter out of the way, he finally turned his gaze back to Qi Zhen and the others. To think that the seers would actually collude with the otherworldly demonic tribe. Unforgivable. Boom. With just a thought, countless streaks of lightning descended from the heavens, trapping Qi Zhen and the others in place. Miserable wails escaped from their mouths as the violent lightning devastated their bodies. With a light wave of his hand, the tortoiseshell ceiling was ripped apart by the onslaught of the lightning above, thus leaving the seers in the guild completely exposed to the heavenly retribution. Seers sought to steal the secrets of the heavens, so their very existence wasn't permitted by the world. Despite so, they still dared to collude together with the otherworldly demonic tribe to bring harm to their own brethren. They were truly seeking death. As the lightning ravaged the seer guild, Zhang Xian could feel greater clarity in his thoughts. It was hard to put a finger on the feeling, but he could feel the library of heaven's path growing stronger bit by bit. With a satisfied nod of his head, he took out his communication jade token and instructed Zhang Shi to bring the elders of the Sanctum of Sages over. It didn't take long for Zhang Shi to arrive together with Gu Shi and the others. I'll give these seers to you. They are guilty of colluding with the otherworldly demons who stole Sage Kuei's sculpture. I want you to interrogate them and make them spit out their true intention. Zhang Xian commanded authoritatively. Yes, Sanctum Head. While Zhang Shi and the others were still a little confused by the turn of events, they hurriedly nodded their heads in acknowledgement of Zhang Xian's command. Let's go. Zhang Xian turned to Luo Ruoxin and said, while he had failed to apprehend the culprits who had stolen Sage Kuei's sculpture, at the very least, they did manage to learn of the Seer Guild's treachery. Through uncovering the goals of these seers, they should be able to fathom a guess at what the otherworldly demonic tribe was up to. In any case, the Sanctum of Sages should be competent enough to deal with this matter, so it would suffice to entrust this matter to them. The urgent matter at hand was for him to return to the Zhang clan and resolve the conflict between the Zhang clan and the Luo clan. Otherwise, the rift in their relations would hinder the two clans from cooperating with one another to deal with the impending crisis. Considering how even the otherworldly demon ancient sages had begun to move, he wasn't so naive to think that the Zhang clan would be able to survive the impending crisis alone. After leaving the Seer Guild, the three of them traveled through the spatial passageway Wuxia had opened up, and it didn't take them long to arrive at the Zhang clan. Xianer, you are back. Upon seeing Zhang Xian, Sword Saint Xing, and the others quickly rushed forward to welcome him. You must be Ruoxin. I am Zhang Xian's mother. Do you remember me? We met one another back at the Luo clan, but I didn't really get to talk much with you then. Shall we have a walk together? Seeing the young lady that her son had brought with him, Sword Saint Meng's eyes glowed so brightly in excitement that it seemed as if sparks would fly from them. Luo Ruoxin was unaccustomed to being so warmly welcomed that her face swiftly flushed in a fluster. Unsure of how she should respond, she turned to Zhang Xian for help. In response to her distress signal, Zhang Xian averted his gaze, feigning ignorance to her plight. He is. Sword Saint Xing gestured to Wu Chun and asked. He had seen with his own eyes just how powerful the adolescent boy was back at the Luo clan. If it was possible, he would more than delighted to get acquainted with an expert of such a caliber and trade insights with him. His name is Wu Chun, and he's serving Ruoxin, Zhang Xian introduced. Before Sword Saint Xing could say a word, a haughty voice had already sounded by the side. Serving? He's a servant? I see. After our young master marries your young mistress, you'll be under my command then. Let's get along well. Unknowingly, Sun Chang had walked over out of nowhere, and he patted Wu Chen's shoulder with a gleeful smile on his face. After the incident at the Empire Alliance, Sun Chang was forced to train under Zheng Yang at the Combat Master Hall. However, after Zhao Ye and the others were kidnapped, out of concern of the safety of his other students, he had Zheng Yang, Wang Ying, and the others move over to the Zhang clan. Naturally, Sun Chang had to move over to the Zhang clan as well. Upon learning that the young master he served was the head of the Zhang clan and the Sanctum of Sages, his confidence was swiftly restored. From time to time, one would see him strutting haughtily around the Zhang clan, almost as if he owned the place. This was the airs that he felt he should put up as the butler of the head of the strongest sage clan on the master-teacher continent. "I'll be under your command?" Wu Chen nearly fainted on the spot hearing those words. "You don't seem to be too pleased about it. Are you unwilling to follow my orders? Let me tell you, I am the only butler that our young master has. No one would dare to speak a word on your behalf, even if I were to teach you a lesson." Sensing Wu Chen's reluctance, Sun Chong slapped the adolescent boy's head and harumphed. "You are just a mere servant. How dare you refuse to heed my orders? Just try frowning once more, and I'll give you a good pummeling so that you know who is boss here." This, not expecting their son's butler to be so unreliable, the Xingming sword saint nearly keeled over. That adolescent boy barged into the Luo clan and stood indomitable in the combined prowess of their elders. Yet, a fellow who had barely reached Saint Realm actually dared to slap his head. "Are you tired of living?" Zhang Xian couldn't help but cover his head in embarrassment. If there was a hole in the vicinity, he would have definitely leaped right in to hide. It wasn't too long ago that this fellow suffered the greatest trauma in life. So how in the world did his ego inflate so much after just a couple of days? Sun Chong's arrogance didn't last for too long. All of a sudden, he found himself floating into the air without doing anything, and slowly, he drifted off into the horizon before disappearing altogether. Seeing that Wu Chen had only made Sun Chong float away, Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. It was a huge headache to him how Sun Chong tried to boast of his standing at every opportunity he got. To be honest, he had wanted to teach that fellow some humility for a very long time. It was incomprehensible to him how someone as low profile as him ended up with this braggart of a butler. He really should have been more stringent with his choice back then. If he had a choice to pick another butler in the future, he would really have to find one that was reliable. At the very least, his butler should like Wu Chen, capable of solving most problems on his own. Even if he couldn't find someone of Wu Chen's caliber, at the very least, his butler shouldn't pull him down and land him in trouble every now and then. If not for the fact that Sun Chong had followed him since his time at Tianxian Kingdom, there was no way he would tolerate all of this. Clan Head. The Luo clan has recently inaugurated a person known as Luo Tianya as their new clan head. Rumor has it that he has comprehended the spatial quintessence of sealing, and we believe that the reason behind their visit at this point in time is to have him challenge you to a duel and return the favor from the engagement ceremony. In fact, we heard that they have invited the Master-Teacher Pavilion over to officiate the duel, so as to ensure fairness. As they took their seats in the main hall, an elder stood up and reported with a clasped fist. Hearing those words, Zhang Xian rubbed his glabella in distress as he replied, "I am aware of that. The reason why I have returned is to resolve this issue. The spatial quintessence of sealing is the highest heritage of the Luo clan. Those who have comprehended it are capable of freezing space, rendering one completely helpless. Even we would have trouble dealing with something like that. Xianer, you have to be careful." Sword Saint Xing advised worriedly. The Zhang clan and the Luo clan had been relatively close to one another the past few years, so they were well aware of the prowess of the Luo clan. Once a cultivator had comprehended the spatial quintessence of sealing, it was only a matter of time before he reached the top of the continent. His son might be nigh invincible in his power class, but it would still be difficult for him to triumph over an opponent of such caliber. The Luo clan has already been humiliated once by the annulment of the engagement ceremony. Given how they dared to challenge us publicly at this juncture, it's likely that they are confident of victory. Our Zhang clan doesn't have any records on Luo Tianya, but we have just received news that he has managed to defeat an expert from the 100 schools of philosophers. The elder who had just spoken earlier added grimly, "He has defeated an expert from the 100 schools of philosophers? That bunch of people has finally shown themselves?" Sword Saint Meng asked with a frown. It seems like 100 schools of philosophers have challenged the Luo clan to a duel with the celestial amulet of legacy at stake. The Luo clan was in a disadvantageous position when Luo Tianya suddenly appeared out of nowhere and defeated them. After which, they tested his bloodline and found that its purity was at the level of 9. As such, the elders unanimously nominated him to become the head of the Luo clan, and they swiftly conducted the inauguration ceremony afterward. The elder replied, due to their close relations in the past, they had tabs on one another. On top of that, the Luo clan made no attempts to conceal the news either. As such, the elder in charge of acquiring intelligence in the Zhang clan didn't take too long to learn of the matter. Having inherited Kong Shi's heritage, the 100 schools of philosophers wields nigh invincible prowess in their power class. Even the combat masters would have trouble subduing them, considering how Luo Tianya was able to defeat them with ease. His prowess is indeed not something that we can afford to underestimate. Sword Saint Meng frowned worriedly. Regarding that, Zhang Xian scratched his head awkwardly. If I were to say that I'm Luo Tianya, would you believe me? Stop messing around. The other party boasts the purest bloodline in the Luo clan. So how could you be him? Sword Saint Meng shook her head. Her son possessed her bloodline. This was something which they had verified previously. Given so, there was no way he could possess the Luo clan bloodline. On the other hand, Luo Tianya was someone who had been tested to have a purity level of 9 for the Luo clan bloodline. Given so, there was no way the two of them could be the same person. This, Zhang Xian was rendered speechless. He had already told them the truth, but why didn't anyone believe him? Sighing helplessly, he was just about to explain the entire matter when a furious gust of wind sounded above them, following which, a loud voice echoed throughout the Zhang clan. Nangong Yuanfeng and Tantai Jinqing from the 100 schools of philosophers' great frontistery of Confucianism has come with a couple of juniors to pay a visit to the head of the Zhang clan. What are they doing here? Have they already recovered from their wounds? Zhang Xian slightly startled by the declaration. He quickly walked out from the main hall, and the others followed closely behind him. Floating in the air was Nangong Yuanfeng, and by his side was a stout middle-aged man with a rather disproportionate face. Behind them were a group of 8 young men, presumably the students of Nangong Yuanfeng, and the stout middle-aged man. Tantai Jinqing? Is he the descendant of ancient sage Ziyu? Zhang Xian thought with a frown. Ancient sage Ziyu went by the compound surname of Tantai. Due to his disproportionate facial features, Kong Shi had once judged him by his appearance and ended up wronging him. That resulted in the famous saying, "Judge a man by his looks, and one shall wrong a Ziyu." With such doubts in mind, Zhang Xian took a closer look at those men and noted that Nangong Yuanfeng's complexion was still a little pale. His 4 disciples, Nangong Mo and the others, also looked a little sickly. It was apparent that they hadn't fully recovered from their injuries yet. Something is not right here. While I did send them flying in a single strike, their injuries shouldn't have been so severe. How did they end up like that? Zhang Xian was perplexed. While he did use his full might during the duel with Nangong Yuanfeng, he didn't ignite Kong Shi's blood droplet, so the damage he would have caused should have been limited. It was true that Nangong Yuanfeng was a little more vulnerable during the duel, considering that he had his cultivation suppressed down to Saint 9 Dan back then. But he should have been able to recover swiftly once he released the seal on his cultivation. So, why did Nangong Yuanfeng appear to be so heavily injured at the moment? I am the head of the Zhang clan Zhang Xian. It's an honor for us to welcome the envoys from the 100 schools of philosophers. Please let's talk inside. Knowing that this wasn't the moment for him to be dazing off, Zhang Xian clasped his fist and welcomed them. Very well. Seeing that Zhang Xian's etiquette was impeccable, there was nothing Nangong Yuanfeng and the others could complain about. Thus they quickly descended from the sky. This way. Zhang Xian gestured with a smile before leading the way into the main hall. After taking their respective seats, Nangong Yuanfeng got to the topic at hand. Time is very tight on our side, so allow me to get straight to the point. The Temple of Confucius will be opening very soon, and our 100 schools of philosophers hopes to enter the premises to pay respects to the predecessors as well. We have heard that the Zhang clan has managed to obtain one of the celestial amulet of legacy, and we are hoping that you would be so kind as to offer it to us. Rest assured that we won't take advantage of you. We'll be offering something of equivalent value in exchange of the amulet. You want the celestial amulet of legacy? That's out of the question. Our Zhang clan intends to enter the Temple of Confucius as well, so I'm afraid that we won't be able to fulfill your request. Sword Saint Xing replied with a dark look on his face. It was as he had expected. The 100 schools of philosophers had indeed come for their celestial amulet of legacy. The Temple of Confucius was where Kong Shi had stored his most valuable treasures and heritage in. Missing the opportunity to enter the Temple of Confucius was equivalent to being ousted from the race for the top. Furthermore, it was not by sheer luck that the Zhang clan had come to possess the celestial amulet of legacy. So how could they possibly hand it over to someone else so easily? Even if the other party was from the 100 schools of philosophers, this matter was not open for negotiation. As if he had expected such a response, Nangong Yuanfeng sighed deeply and said, "Since that's the case, I guess we'll have to compete for it then." Kong Shi has always encouraged competition amongst his students, so that they would strive to improve themselves. Considering that the celestial amulet of legacy was his gift to the later generations, he would hope for it to be in the hands of the most qualified individual. After all, only such a person would be worthy of inheriting his treasures and heritage. Since that's the case, we shall make a formal challenge to the Zhang clan. If there's any Zhang clan offspring of 100 years old and below, who is able to surpass our students in the comprehension of temporal laws, our 100 schools of philosophers promises to never raise the matter regarding the celestial amulet of legacy with the Zhang clan ever again, and we'll offer a possession of the ancient sages as a formal apology to the Zhang clan. Conversely, if there's no Zhang clan offspring who is able to surpass our students in the comprehension of temporal laws, I'd have to ask you to entrust the celestial amulet of legacy to our care. Your students will be challenging our Zhang clan to the comprehension of temporal laws. Zhang Xian looked at Nangong Yuanfeng and frowned. That's not it. It's Brother Tantai's students who will be challenging the Zhang clan offspring. Nangong Yuanfeng replied with a smile. In Chinese, a compounded surname refers to surnames consisting of two characters. If there are two syllables to the surname would be a compounded surname. Some of the more well-known examples of compounded surnames would be Ouyang, Huangfu, Shuangguan, Linghu, so on and so forth. Due to Ziyu's appearance, Kong Zi once judged that he was of mediocre aptitude and wouldn't achieve great things in the future. However, Ziyu ended up proving him wrong in how he was able to effectively spread Kong Zi's teachings across many states. Thus the saying, I am Tantai Jinxing, a descendant of ancient sage Ziyu. It's my honor to meet the head of the Zhang clan. The middle-aged man with a disproportionate face seated beside Nangong Yuanfeng stood up and bowed deeply. His manners and etiquette were truly flawless, making it impossible for one to pick a bone with him. Despite their visit being provocative in nature, his refined demeanor made it difficult for one to dislike him. So, this is a true philosopher, Zhang Xian remarked internally. He had met plenty of master teachers and experts on his journey, and there was a handful who had conducted themselves with grace and propriety. However, none of them could match the middle-aged man before him. With just a look, one could tell that he was a true Confucian. Elder Tantai, you are too courteous. Zhang Xian stood up and returned the greeting. I believe Brother Yuanfeng has already clarified the reason behind our visit. Kong Shi's heritage is something that we hold dear, so I'm afraid that we can't give up on it easily. The young men behind me are my direct disciples, and they have studied under me for quite some time. So as to not sully the relations between us, I propose a duel of temporal laws with your esteemed clan between our juniors. Regardless of the outcome of the duel, we are willing to gift this inkstone once used by my ancestor to the Zhang clan as a token of apology. As he said those words, Tantai Jinxing flicked his wrist, and a pitch-black inkstone materialized in the air. This is a possession of ancient sage Ziyu? Sword Saint Xing, and the others were astounded by the gift. The inkstone wasn't too big, but it emanated a heavy aura that felt as if it could even weigh down the world. It was as though even disturbances in space-time would be calmed by its presence. This is a true ancient sage artifact. Zhang Xian's eyebrows shot up in astonishment. The sword that Nangong Yuanfeng had offered back at the Luo clan was only an artifact, once used by ancient sage Zirong. It could not be considered a true ancient sage artifact. It was not to say that it did not have any value, but it was not something that would truly drive others frenzied over it. On the other hand, the inkstone before them was an artifact that ancient sage Zirong had used in his peak. However, it's still far from matching my Dragonbone Divine Spear. Putting aside the fact that ancient sage Ranqiu had been far stronger than ancient sage Ziyu, just the fact that the Dragonbone Divine Spear was an artifact intended for battle, whereas an inkstone was a literary device, the primary purposes of their existences already varied vastly from one another. Nevertheless, if they could just acquire the inkstone, its presence could help to contain good fortune within the Zhang clan. Zhang Xian turned his gaze back to Tantai Jinqing and remarked, "With the sincerity you have shown, I suppose it would be rude for me to turn down the duel then." "I ask for your understanding for this matter," Tantai Jinqing replied with a gentle smile. "The Temple of Confucius, a place that all master teachers of our generation hope to visit. Beneath the courtesy and politeness, competition over it is inevitable. Since that's the case, may the most qualified individual obtain the rights." Zhang Xian waved his hand with a smile as he stood up. "May I know what format you intend for the duel?" The purpose behind the other party's visit was the Celestial Amulet of Legacy, and it was apparent that they had no intention of backing down. Since that was the case, there was no purpose in engaging in a verbal tug-of-war. It would be much better to get it over and done with. Since Clan Head Zhang has entrusted the decision to me, I shall propose a format for the duel then. Tantai Jinqing nodded. Our 100 Schools of Philosophers distinguishes duels into two main categories, namely academic and martial. An academic duel preserves the amity between two parties, whereas a martial duel puts one's capabilities to the test. What would the academic duel and martial duel for this matter be then? I have a temporal mirror here. Through reflecting one's primordial spirit on it, it allows one's consciousness to seep into the mirror. There are many temporal formations and time traps embedded within the mirror that the challenger would have to overcome. This is the academic duel, Tantai Jinqing said as a golden mirror materialized before him. Unlike normal mirrors, the surface of the temporal mirror was not flat. It had many different vertices that reflected off one another, forming a dizzying image reminiscent of a kaleidoscope. As for martial duel, we'll suppress our cultivation to the same level and duel with one another. All is fair game, and the one who boasts superior strength shall emerge victorious. After explaining the two duels, Tantai Jinqing sat back and gazed at the crowd around him with a patient smile, waiting for the Zhang clan to make their decision. The disciples of our Zhang clan have never encountered the temporal mirror before, so they are unaware of the mechanisms and formations hidden within it. It'd be disadvantageous for us to face them in an academic duel. As for the martial duel, the 100 Schools of Philosophers are known to wield superior battle techniques, so it won't be easy for our disciples to best them. An elder remarked grimly. Aren't they simply proposing whatever is advantageous to them? It can't be helped. Our Zhang clan isn't weak, but the foundations of the 100 Schools of Philosophers are simply too strong. Furthermore, they have already made their stand very clear. Whether we wanted it or not, we've stepped into the ring with them. What should we do? The complexions of the elders in the room did not look too good. While the proposed academic duel might have sounded fair, the asymmetry of information made the circumstances highly disadvantageous to the Zhang clan. None of the disciples of the Zhang clan had a clue about what they would face in the temporal mirror, whereas the disciples of the 100 Schools of Philosophers were likely familiar with it. Even if their comprehension of temporal laws was at the same level as one another, the one who was more familiar with the temporal mirror was likely to be able to clear more obstacles than the one who was unfamiliar with it. This was similar to running a marathon in another person's home turf. Even if the two runners were equally skilled, the runner who was familiar with the local terrain was bound to be in an advantageous position. The same applied for the martial duel. The 100 Schools of Philosophers had inherited their heritage directly from Kong Shi and his direct disciples, so their collection of battle techniques and secret arts was bound to be far superior to that of the Zhang clan. It was true that the Zhang clan had been blessed with plenty of incredible geniuses over the past tens of thousands of years, but it would be expecting too much of them to outdo Kang Shi and his direct disciples. In other words, be it the academic duel or the martial duel, things were not in their favor. Paying no heed to the worried crowd around him, Zhang Xian replied calmly, "The academic duel sounds interesting to me, but it feels like it'll be rather time-consuming. Let's just go with the martial duel and end it quickly." "Martial duel? Very well." Tantai Jinqing nodded with an amiable smile. He raised his hand, and a young man walked out from behind him. "This young man over here is Tantai Jinkui. He's my direct disciple and is 30 this year. His comprehension of temporal laws is still rather superficial, so I beg your pardon if his skills appear to be unpolished." Hula. Right after those words were spoken, the young man walked to the center of the main hall and halted. A forbidding aura burst forth from his body, exerting heavy pressure on those around him. Great Sage One Dan Introspective Convalescence Realm. Sword Saint Xing narrowed his eyes. To reach Great Sage One Dan despite having only been 30 this year, other than his son, there was no one in the Zhang clan who could match Tantai Jinkui in terms of talent. In fact, even Sword Saint Xing himself had been far beyond that age when he first stepped into Great Sage One Dan. "Tantai Jinkui, please." The young man clasped his fist and bowed. "Xianer, even though your cultivation has already reached Saint Nine Dan Pinnacle, you have never systematically inherited our Zhang clan's heritage of temporal laws. If you find yourself forced to a corner, do not hesitate to use your secret art." "I'm referring to the secret art that you used to raise your prowess to the sempiternal realm when you fought with me." Sword Saint Xing sent a telepathic message to his son. The most talented offspring below 100 years of age within the Zhang clan was indubitably Zhang Xian. If he used the secret art that he had utilized before, he would surely be able to defeat the other party with absolute ease. "I'm afraid that I won't be able to use that secret art anymore." Zhang Xian shook his head. He needed Kang Shi's blood droplet in order to activate that ability, but he had already expended all 3 droplets. In other words, this trump card had already been rendered obsolete. "You aren't able to use that secret art anymore?" Sword Saint Xing's eyebrows shot up in astonishment. Then, even though the opponent would be suppressing his cultivation, the difference in their real cultivation realms would still result in a significant gap in their fighting prowess. Even for his incredibly talented son, it would surely be a tough battle. "Don't worry. I won't be the one fighting the duel anyway," Zhang Xian remarked with a light chuckle. "You won't be the one fighting the duel?" Hearing those words, Sword Saint Xing was visibly startled. The others also quickly turned astounded gazes over as well. "If you aren't going to fight, who will?" "Of course it won't be me. Don't you think that we'll be taking advantage of our guests here if I fight them?" Zhang Xian scoffed matter-of-factly, and a smile crept onto his lips. "I think that we should pass this opportunity onto the younger generation. Let my student Zhang Jiuxiao do the fighting instead." Younger generation? The lips of the crowd twitched upon hearing those words. Isn't Zhang Jiuxiao older than you? For a 20-year-old young man, to address someone older than him as the younger generation. Well, in terms of seniority, Zhang Jiuxiao was his student, so there was not anything wrong with that address, just that there was just an inexplicable feeling of incongruity. Furthermore, Zhang Jiuxiao is only at Saint 8 Dan Pinnacle at the moment. Even though his bloodline is pure, he has never learned the core battle techniques and cultivation techniques of our Zhang clan, so I fear. Sword Saint Xing said with a deep frown. It was during the clan tournament that Zhang Jiuxiao had achieved a breakthrough to Saint 8 Dan primary stage. During that period of time, the clan had devoted many resources to grooming him, so it did not take long for his cultivation to advance to Saint 8 Dan Pinnacle. With such cultivation, he could indeed be considered as one of the most outstanding cultivators among the younger generation. However, the opponent that he was facing was a genius from the 100 schools of philosophers, Tantai Jinkui. To make matters worse, he had come from the side family. As a result, He had never had the opportunity to access the core heritage of the Zhang clan. No matter how they looked at it, it did not seem like Zhang Jiuxiao stood much of a chance. The celestial amulet of legacy was at stake. Was it really fine to take this matter so lightly? Paying no heed to the words of advice around him, Zhang Xian waved his hand casually and instructed, "It's fine. Invite him over." Yes, an elder bowed deeply in response before walking out of the main hall. It did not take long for him to return with the young man in tow. "Teacher." Walking into the room, Zhang Jiuxiao quickly walked up to Zhang Xian and bowed deeply. I believe that the ninth elder should have filled you in on the situation by now. I want you to represent our Zhang clan in a duel against the 100 schools of philosophers. And I want you to know that I won't tolerate a loss." Zhang Xian placed his hands behind his back. "I can't lose the duel?" A distressed frown surfaced between Zhang Jiuxiao's brows. "Teacher, I barely made a breakthrough yesterday, so I haven't fully reinforced my cultivation yet." He had already heard the story from the ninth elder on the way there, and he knew just how important the duel with the 100 schools of philosophers was. If he lost, he would really become the sinner of the Zhang clan. "You haven't fully reinforced your cultivation yet? That's no problem at all." Zhang Xian stood up and walked toward Zhang Jiuxiao. "Sit down." "Yes, teacher." Zhang Jiuxiao had no idea what his teacher was going to do, but he knew his teacher would not instruct him to do something for no reason. Thus, he crossed his leg and sat down on the floor without any hesitation. Walking behind Zhang Jiuxiao, Zhang Xian stretched his hand forward and placed it on top of the other party's head. Slightly surprised by Zhang Xian's sudden action, Zhang Jiuxiao was just about to say something when he suddenly felt a warm surge of energy flowing in from the other party's palm. This warm surge of energy swiftly diffused throughout his entire body, clearing up all of the energy blockages and repairing all of the wear and tear that his body had sustained as a result of his recent breakthrough. In the blink of an eye, his cultivation had already harmonized perfectly with his mind, spirit, and psyche. The lapses in his control over his cultivation vanished completely, allowing his junqi to flow smoothly at will. It was almost as if he was a veteran who had been in this cultivation realm for many years. This, Nangong Yuanfeng and Tantai Jinqing traded shocked gazes. Disbelief could be seen reflected in their eyes. This was not cultivation impartation, so it could not be considered a breach of any rules. What the young man did was harmonize his student's cultivation together with his body and soul through a secret art. This was a feat easier said than done. On top of possessing incredibly pure junqi and the utmost control over his energy, more importantly, he needed to have a complete understanding of his student's physical condition. The great frontistery of Confucianism was filled with experts, but there was hardly anyone who could achieve this feat. In fact, not even the ancient sages would confidently claim that they would be able to pull it off. Yet a Saint Nine Dan pinnacle cultivator had actually managed to do it so easily. Was the head of the Zhang clan not a little too formidable? All right, you should have already fully reinforced your Saint 8 Dan pinnacle cultivation. As for the Zhang clan's heritage, at this point, a slight frown emerged on Zhang Xian's forehead, and he fell into a brief moment of thought. A moment later, he raised his head to look at Tantai Jinqing. With an apologetic look on his face, he clasped his fist and bowed. Elder Tantai, it hasn't been long since my student returned to the Zhang clan, so he's only adept in the battle techniques of the side family. If you would just give me some time, I'd like to impart some moves to him right now. This way, he will be more prepared for the battle with your student later on. You are intending to impart some moves to your student right now? Even someone with Tantai Jinqing's demeanor could not help but be taken aback by Zhang Xian's request. Temporal laws were known to be incredibly abstract and difficult to grasp. This was even more so for temporal arts, which were derived from the temporal laws. Even his students took several years under his guidance before they were finally able to grasp the bare basics. Yet the young man actually intended to start teaching his student right now. Are you for real? Thinking that Tantai Jinqing was worrying that he would take too long, Zhang Xian added with a smile, "Indeed. Please do not worry, I won't take up too much time. An hour will be sufficient." An hour? Tantai Jinqing was even more dazed after hearing those words. What could the other party possibly learn within an hour? Furthermore, the opponent that the other party would be facing was his student, an introspective convalescence expert. Tantai Jinqing was not the only one who was stunned by this seemingly ridiculous request. Nangong Yuanfeng and his students also glanced at one another in confusion as well. The crowd could not help but lean closer a little, hoping to see how Zhang Xian intended to impart temporal arts to his student within an hour. However, at this moment, they heard Sword Saint Xing's frenzied voice. Xianer, it has only been 2 days since you returned to the Zhang clan. You haven't even inherited the heritage of the clan yet. So how in the world do you plan to impart it to Jiuxiao? Nangong Yuanfeng and Tantai Jinqing staggered. In the end, the young man was not even adept in temporal arts himself, and he still dared to claim that he would impart it to his student within an hour. Really, can you tell us just what is going through your mind? Is the head of the Zhang clan actually an idiot? It's fine, I can just learn them right now. 8th Elder, you hold the key to the library of our Zhang clan. I want you to bring the battle techniques and cultivation techniques of our clans over right now. Zhang Xian instructed. Yes, clan head. The 8th Elder quickly rushed out of the main hall. A few moments later, he returned to the room. With a flick of his hand, a huge pile of books stacked on bookshelves materialized before the crowd. It was a tremendous collection consisting of several 100,000 books. The reason the Zhang clan was able to continuously groom generation after generation of experts and retain its position as the #1 sage clan could mostly be credited to its rich heritage. The collection of cultivation techniques and battle techniques that it had amassed over the years was truly a sight to behold. In fact, the 8th Elder had only brought over some of the more commonly practiced cultivation techniques and battle techniques. Considering the limited time that they had, he did not have time to take out all of the books. I've troubled you. Zhang Xian first thanked the 8th Elder, before turning his gaze to the books before him. He swiftly enveloped the bookshelves before him with his spiritual perception, and the next moment, the several 100,000 books floated into the air and began flipping automatically. This is memorization through spiritual perception, recital of 1,000 books? How is this possible? Tantai Jinqing widened his eyes in disbelief. Memorization through spiritual perception requires a cultivator to divide his spiritual perception into countless fragments in order to browse through and memorize the content in the books simultaneously. Even Kong Shiyao, who is known to possess the greatest talent in the great frontistry of Confucianism, is only capable of browsing through 3,000 books simultaneously, and that is already a feat that has broken records that have stood for tens of thousands of years. Yet that young man is actually flipping through several 100,000 books simultaneously. Just how powerful is his spiritual perception? Nangong Yuanfeng's jaw had practically dropped to the ground. Any Saint Tudan expert could easily use their spiritual perception to memorize a book swiftly. But it was a different story when it came to multiple books. Reading 2 books simultaneously would require a cultivator divide their attention between the 2 books. And this was not too easy for primordial spirit realm cultivators to pull off. The great frontistry of Confucianism was filled with experts, but even the most talented prodigy was only capable of memorizing 3,000 books simultaneously. Yet this fellow was actually trying to browse through several 100,000 books at once. Was he not afraid of overloading his mind with information and turning into a retard? It's also possible that he's just browsing through the contents with his spiritual perception and not memorizing anything at all. Nangong Yuanfeng remarked a short moment later. Browsing through the content and memorizing them were 2 entirely different concepts. The former only required one to scan through the book with one's spiritual perception. There was no need to attempt to understand or absorb the contents at all. On the other hand, the latter required one to commit everything that one had seen to memory. Naturally, the level of difficulty for both feats was vastly different. If it was just browsing through several 100,000 books at once, he was able to do it as well. Let's keep watching. We'll know very soon whether he's faking it or not. Tantai Jinqing replied. Right after he finished those words, the hundreds of thousands of books in the air were flipped over to the very last page before falling heavily back onto the bookshelves. Eighth Elder, I'll have to trouble you to take back all of the books, Zhang Xian instructed before taking a deep breath and closing his eyes, seemingly trying to assimilate the knowledge that he had just taken in. Yes, the Eighth Elder replied as he stowed the shelves back into his storage ring before rushing off. Roughly 10 breaths later, Zhang Xian finally opened his eyes and said, Jiu Xiao, you have practiced a simplified version of the Zhang clan's cultivation technique previously. In the interest of time, I'll just correct a few simple flaws. The main issue lies in your battle technique and comprehension of temporal laws. I have compiled 2 manuals based on the books that I have just read, and I'll impart them to you right now. After saying those words, he flicked his finger and directed a sliver of his will into Zhang Jiuxiao's consciousness. This, taking in the knowledge that his teacher had imparted to him, Zhang Jiuxiao's body suddenly froze on the spot. Temporal laws were known to be even more abstract and profound than spatial laws, thus making them extremely difficult to grasp and comprehend. There were many cultivators who had spent their entire lives trying to fathom them, only to fail miserably. It was for this reason that even Zhang clan offspring were only able to tap into the prowess of time through their bloodline ability, or the Zhang clan swordsmanship. Zhang Jiuxiao had thought that even if he really possessed decent aptitude toward temporal arts, it would still take him quite some time before he could really grasp them. However, the manual that his teacher had just imparted to him was structured in a really comprehensible manner, gradually establishing one's fundamental interpretation of temporal laws before delving in deep. With this, the difficulty in grasping and comprehending temporal laws was lowered tremendously. At the rate that he was improving at, he was confident that he would be able to achieve a decent mastery of temporal laws within less than half a month. Unfortunately, that was still too long. With such a thought in mind, Zhang Jiuxiao raised his head and said, Teacher, I don't think that there's enough time for me to master those 2 manuals. It was not that he did not want to bring honor to the Zhang clan, but even with the 2 manuals that his teacher had imparted to him, he would still require some time before he was able to truly wield temporal arts in battle. This was not a matter that could really be rushed. 1 hour was simply too little time. Calm down, there's no need to panic. Ignite this droplet of blood in your body. Seemingly expecting such a situation, Zhang Xian flicked his finger lightly, and a droplet of blood essence seeped into Zhang Jiuxiao's glabella. This was a droplet of the most concentrated blood essence of the Zhang clan. Wang. As soon as the droplet seeped into Zhang Jiuxiao's body, it was immediately ignited, following which, the latter was placed in a unique state of mind. This is time acceleration? Tantai Jinqing narrowed his eyes. As the droplet of blood seeped into Zhang Jiuxiao's body, he could clearly sense the other party's consciousness entering some kind of temporal whirlpool. The flow of time within this whirlpool was accelerated from the external world. In other words, an hour in the external world could very well mean a day, or even more to Zhang Jiuxiao's consciousness. One of the elders of the Zhang clan saw through what Zhang Xian had done, and he remarked in awe, accelerating the time of one's consciousness. This is rather similar to our blood reservoir. The Zhang clan's blood reservoir allowed the offspring of the Zhang clan to accelerate the time of their consciousness, thus enhancing the speed at which they cultivated. It played a crucial role in ensuring that the geniuses of the Zhang clan remained ahead of their rivals. The blood reservoir only accelerates time by roughly 10 times, whereas the ability used by the clan head accelerates time more than 100-fold. Another elder of the Zhang clan added as he gulped. He used the most concentrated blood essence of our Zhang clan to set up a time acceleration temporal formation within Zhang Jiuxiao's head. By limiting the time acceleration effect to just the consciousness, he was able to lower the cost to the bare minimum. Sword Saint Xing remarked with a nod. Others might not have been able to see through what Zhang Xian was doing, but as an ex-head of the Zhang clan, as well as one of its top experts, he was able to easily see through his son's motives. Under normal circumstances, the activation of one's bloodline was extremely demanding on one's blood essence. There were often cases where offspring of sage clans completely depleted their blood essence, barely after executing one or two battle techniques. Zhang Xian used a unique secret art to alter only the flow of time for Zhang Jiuxiao's consciousness. Through this, not only was the consumption of blood essence extremely low, the acceleration of time could also be enhanced many-fold. Even if he's able to accelerate time by more than 100-fold, that would only amount to a couple of days at most. Will Zhang Jiuxiao really be able to gain the strength to defeat Tantai Jinkui within just a few days? The elder who had spoken earlier asked uncertainly. While the means of their clan head were indeed astounding, Zhang Jiuxiao's starting point was simply too low. Even with the clan head's time acceleration, would a couple of days really be enough for him to defeat Tantai Jinkui? Most of the elders of the Zhang clan had devoted several centuries of their lives to studying temporal arts, but they had barely been able to make any progress in it. Paying no heed to the skepticism among the crowd, Zhang Xian returned to his seat and closed his eyes. He seemed to be assimilating the knowledge that he had just taken in from the several 100,000 books. The reason he had used his spiritual perception to flip through the books was simply to put up a cover before the 100 schools of philosophers and the Zhang clan. In truth, with just a scan of his eyes, he had already collected all of the books, memorized their content, and successfully formed the Heaven's Path temporal art. The manuals that he had imparted to Zhang Jiuxiao were the simplified version of it, and right now, what he was planning to do was cultivate the complete version. The predecessors of the Zhang clan did have a deep understanding of time. Zhang Xian thought in awe as he went through the Heaven's Path temporal art in his mind. He really had to say that many of the predecessors of the Zhang clan had achieved great things in the field of time. It was no wonder the Zhang clan had been able to rise to the position of the #1 sage clan on the continent, becoming an existence that none could surpass in the past tens of thousands of years. Through their hard work, they had managed to decipher much of the secrets of time. Some time later, boom! Zhang Xian suddenly felt as if he had grasped upon something tangible, and everything suddenly cleared up before him. A thought emerged in his mind, and it was slowly growing stronger and stronger. At the same time, a phenomenon similar to what had happened in the Luo clan's ancestral hall was happening in the Zhang clan's ancestral hall. Unfortunately, all of the members of the Zhang clan were too preoccupied with the duel against the 100 schools of philosophers, so none of them noticed the phenomenon. When Zhang Xian finally opened his eyes, there was a brilliant light shining from his eyes. I have finally comprehended the time quintessence. It seems like the Zhang clan's time quintessence is centered around the idea of time acceleration for oneself. After fully comprehending the Zhang clan's time quintessence, Zhang Xian finally came to understand the crux of the Zhang clan's heritage. Basically, the Zhang clan's time quintessence allowed one to accelerate one's time, thus allowing one to move at a speed faster than anyone could react. It was incapable of emulating the effects of the Master-Teacher Pavilion's Hall of Spring and Autumn, where a year inside was equivalent to a month outside. Nevertheless, there was no denying that it was a formidable ability. At the very least, it had brought his fighting prowess up to a whole new level. Previously, a droplet of the Zhang clan blood essence would be depleted after activating time acceleration twice. However, with my deepened understanding of temporal laws, I am now able to store it within my body and use it at will without wasting any of its energy. A droplet of blood will now be able to last me dozens of uses easily, Zhang Xian thought in delight. Of the 3 droplets of Zhang clan blood essence that Sword Saint Xing had given him, he had spent a droplet dealing with the Dragonbone Divine Spear, and another droplet to accelerate Zhang Jiuxiao's time. As such, he only had 1 droplet left. That being so, with his enhanced understanding of the time quintessence of acceleration, he would be able to use it with far greater efficiency than before. Thinking back, he had really been too wasteful with the first droplet that he had used against the Dragonbone Divine Spear. It could be said that 99% of its energy had been wasted without achieving anything. However, with his enhanced control over temporal laws, he would now be able to effectively utilize every sliver of energy within the blood droplet. As such, Even though he only had a single droplet left at the moment, it would suffice to last him through dozens of uses. Zhang Xian's comprehension of time quintessence did not induce any pulsations of power, but Tantai Jinqing still noticed that something was amiss. He could not help but frown. To him, it was as if the disposition of the head of the Zhang clan had abruptly changed. The other party's aura felt even heavier and reined in, creating a feeling of unfathomable depth. Time is up. The hour ticked by very swiftly. With a flick of Zhang Xian's finger, Zhang Jiuxiao awoke from his state of trance. He took a few deep breaths as he consolidated his newfound knowledge before walking over to Tantai Jinkui. Clasping his fist and bowing deeply, he gestured politely. Please. Very well. With a firm nod, Tantai Jinkui suppressed the energy in his body. In the blink of an eye, his cultivation was lowered to Saint 8 Dan Pinnacle, the same level as Zhang Jiuxiao. Let's begin the duel, Zhang Xian said with a wave of his hand by the side. Please guide me along. Without any hesitation, Zhang Jiuxiao took a step forward before abruptly vanishing. Before anyone realized it, he was already standing before Tantai Jinkui. With a light thrust of his palm, immense might poured forth from his hand. Swift and powerful. Initially, Tantai Jinkui did not think very highly of his opponent even after suppressing his cultivation. After all, he was already an introspective convalescence realm expert, whereas his opponent was only at Saint 8 Dan Pinnacle. However, Zhang Jiuxiao's swift maneuver had caught him off guard, causing him to narrow his eyes in astonishment. He anxiously drove his Jinqi desperately as he swiftly retreated. Tantai Jinkui could tell that his opponent had not managed to comprehend time quintessence yet, but he was not too far from reaching that realm. To come so close to time quintessence within a single hour. Was that even humanly possible? Tantai Jinkui's reaction was not slow, but Zhang Jiuxiao was simply faster. He abruptly opened up his thrusting palm and flicked his fingers lightly. So. Sword chi shot forth from his 5 fingers simultaneously. These strands of sword chi appeared to move at a terribly slow speed. But in truth, they were not limited by the constraints of time and space. They would arrive right before its target in the blink of an eye, making it nigh impossible to guard against them. This is the highest level of the Zhang clan swordsmanship. He, Sword Saint Xing, and Sword Saint Meng traded shocked gazes with one another. Even for them, they had to collaborate closely with one another before they were able to execute the highest level of the Zhang clan swordsmanship. Zhang Jiuxiao had clearly never learned the Zhang clan swordsmanship prior to this, but he actually managed to reach such a level within a single hour. Furthermore, it was sword chi shot out from his fingertips and not a sword. Just what kind of mystical manual did their son impart to Zhang Jiuxiao? Pu. Even though Tantai Jinkui's retreat was swift, he was still unable to outrun the sword chi chasing after him. That being said, through his sheer battle instincts, he was still able to pull off an ingenious defensive maneuver at the very last moment. As a result, the sword chi only scraped his clothes. It's my turn now. Tantai Jinkui had thought that he would be able to defeat his opponent easily and make a huge contribution to the 100 schools of philosophers, but he had nearly sustained severe injuries in just the first encounter. Knowing that it would be foolish to continue underestimating his opponent, his expression turned serious. Without any warning, he charged forward with astounding speed to launch a counterattack. Through the augmentation of his temporal art, his movement speed was unimaginably fast. Putting aside one's naked eyes, it would be impossible to trace his movements even through one's spiritual perception. Before one could even process what was going on, a fist carrying tremendous might would be right before one's face. But despite the abrupt counterattack from Tantai Jinkui, Zhang Jiuxiao did not show the slightest hint of fear. Instead, he weaved his fingers before him and created a protective sphere made of sword chi around him, thus successfully defending against Tantai Jinkui's assault. At this point, Tantai Jinqing suddenly shook his head grimly and sighed pitifully. It seems like Jinkui is going to lose. Going to lose? His opponent might be formidable, but isn't Jinkui standing his ground? Nangong Yuanfeng was taken aback by Tantai Jinqing's remark. In his view, the two young men appeared to be equally skilled with one another. In fact, in the face of Tantai Jinkuei's relentless punches, Zhang Juxiao seemed to have been forced into a disadvantageous position, unable to counterattack at all. So, why would Tantai Jinqing say that Tantai Jinkuei was going to lose? Jinkuei's opponent hasn't made use of the power in his bloodline yet, Tantai Jinqing pointed out. Hearing those words, Nangong Yuanfeng widened his eyes before falling silent. It went without saying that they would investigate the unique abilities of the Zhang clan before coming to challenge them. In their investigation, they had found that the Zhang clan was able to ignite their bloodline to bring about a temporary surge in their speed and strength. Considering how Zhang Jiuxiao was already able to stand toe-to-toe with Tantai Jinkuei without igniting his bloodline, it was clear who the victor would be once he did so. Furthermore, while it might appear that he has been forced into a defensive position, did you notice that he's gradually improving throughout the course of the battle? Initially, he could barely stand his ground against Jinkuei's punches at all, but he's already able to return 3 out of 10 punches now. Slowly but surely, he's familiarizing himself with his newfound strength. In fact, it seems like he might even be intentionally going easy on Jinkui, just to make use of this opportunity to refine his control and further his understanding of temporal arts. Tantai Jinqing said with a helpless smile. As much as he hated to acknowledge it, this was the truth. Previously, when he heard that Nangong Yuanfeng had failed with the Luo clan, he had thought that it was utterly ridiculous for something like this to happen. But after witnessing the prowess commanded by the young talents of the Zhang clan, he realized that the master-teacher continent had already become a formidable force that they could not afford to underestimate anymore. The 100 schools of philosophers had guarded the world from an isolated dimension for tens of thousands of years, remaining completely oblivious to the developments of the outside world. Before they even knew it, they had already become like frogs in a well. Hearing Tantai Jinqing's lamentation, Nangong Yuanfeng turned his gaze to the duel once more. Indeed, Zhang Jiuxiao's movements were becoming smoother and smoother over the course of the battle. Very soon, he was already able to retaliate against 7 out of 10 punches. At this point, it was very clear that the tables were turning on Tantai Jinkuei. Hula! In a momentary lapse between Tantai Jinkuei's attacks, Zhang Jiuxiao took a step forward and pushed a powerful punch through the other party's defenses. If the punch really connected, the other party would sustain severe injuries. Flustered, Tantai Jinkuei hurriedly retreated as he exclaimed, "I admit defeat." He had not expected such an outcome at all. However, it was already apparent to him that his opponent had grown to a level beyond his means to deal with. He no longer stood a chance at victory. On the other hand, hearing Tantai Jinkuei's surrender, Zhang Jiuxiao retracted his fist and halted his offense. Placing his hands behind his back, he gazed quietly at the crowd from the 100 schools of philosophers, seemingly waiting patiently for his next opponent. "Teacher, allow me." Sensing Zhang Jiuxiao's subtle provocation, another young man from the 100 schools of philosophers stepped forward. "Your strength is only slightly above Jinkuei's. If Jinkuei was unable to defeat him, you won't stand much of a chance either," Tantai Jinqing said with a shake of his head. In truth, the fighting prowess of his 4 disciples did not differ too much from one another. While the young man who had just stepped forward commanded a higher understanding of temporal laws, it was still insufficient to defeat the current Zhang Jiuxiao. Even if they fought, there was little doubt that the duel would end in his disciples' defeat. Realizing the same as well, Nangong Yuanfeng suggested, "Why don't you try to suppress your cultivation and challenge him?" Tantai Jinqing pondered deeply for a moment before glancing at Zhang Xian. Looking at the young man's impassive face, he released a deep sigh before shaking his head. "Forget it. A loss is a loss. Even if I step forward, I doubt that things will go our way." To be honest, he did not think of Zhang Jiuxiao as a threat to him at all. He was confident of defeating the young man with ease. But the problem was that Zhang Jiuxiao's defeat did not translate to the Zhang clan's defeat. The head of the Zhang clan had pulled off the memorization through spiritual perception, recital of 1,000 books, and even raised his students' comprehension of temporal laws to a level surpassing that of his disciples within an hour. A person who wielded such capabilities could not possibly be weak. If he made a move, the head of the Zhang clan was bound to make a move as well. In the end, the outcome would still be the same. In the worst-case scenario, he might even be given free transportation through the master-teacher continent, just like what had happened to Nangong Yuanfeng back at the Luo clan. Since the odds were not in his favor at all, there was no need for him to humiliate himself unnecessarily. Without much hesitation, Tantai Jinqing clasped his fist and said, "We'll admit defeat." Seeing that the other party had admitted defeat right after a single battle, Zhang Xian clasped his fist back and smiled. "Elder, I'm grateful for your leniency toward my student." He had fully expected Zhang Jiuxiao to be able to defeat Tantai Jinkui eventually. However, he did not think that the other party would make such a dignified admittance of defeat. Even Nangong Yuanfeng had struggled for quite a bit before being forced to admit defeat. "A loss is a loss. There's no leniency here to speak of," Tantai Jinqing replied. He flicked his wrist, took out ancient sage Ziyu's inkstone and tossed it over, after which he clasped his fist and said, "Farewell." After taking the inkstone, Zhang Xian grabbed the floating temporal mirror and glanced at it before tossing it over to Tantai Jinqing. "Your mirror." "Thank you." Tantai Jinqing took the mirror before leaving together with the others. In the blink of an eye, he had already disappeared from view. Frog in a well refers to someone who is limited by their outlook. It comes from a story where a frog staying in a well thought that the world outside the well is a boring place, consisting of only a circular blue sky. Even when others tried to convince him otherwise, he remained firm in his belief, because all he could see from within the well was indeed just a circular blue sky. After flying for some time, the departing crowd of the 100 schools of philosophers finally came to a halt. "Teacher, I feel indignant at admitting our defeat just like that," one of the young men exclaimed. While Zhang Jiuxiao might be improving swiftly, another young man added through clenched teeth. "As long as we go all out right from the start, we might still be able to defeat him. Also, the head of the Zhang clan might simply be skilled at imparting knowledge. If Sword Saint Xing's words were true, that would be the first time that the head of the Zhang clan had come into contact with the heritage of the Zhang clan. No matter how talented he is, there's no way his comprehension of temporal laws could possibly surpass ours within a single hour." Given that they had not completed the mission that the 100 schools of philosophers had entrusted to them, they would surely be severely punished upon their return. Seeing that his students were indignant at their loss, Tantai Jinqing shook his head in disappointment. "You said that the head of the Zhang clan's comprehension of temporal laws is beneath yours?" "That's right." A young man nodded vehemently. "I might have agreed with you a moment ago. However, just take a look at the temporal mirror." Without explaining a thing, Tantai Jinqing flicked his wrist, and a golden mirror materialized on top of his palm. "What happened to the mirror?" The crowd quickly gathered around Tantai Jinqing. With just a single glance, their eyes narrowed in astonishment. A long crack could be seen on the surface of the mirror, reminiscent of a glaring laceration. "Teacher, what happened? Who damaged the temporal mirror?" Tantai Jinkui asked in shock. The temporal mirror was one of the top treasures of their clan. Even great sage experts would have trouble trying to damage it. Why would such a huge crack suddenly appear on its surface? It was caused by a single glance of the head of the Zhang clan. Tantai Jinqing said with a deep look in his eyes. "It was caused by a single glance?" The crowd frowned in incomprehension. Given the resilience of the temporal mirror, there would not be the slightest dent even if they were to exert their full strength on it. The head of the Zhang clan was only a Saint Nine Dan pinnacle cultivator, but he was able to produce such a long crack on the temporal mirror just by glancing at it. The temporal mirror was left behind by one of our predecessors as a trial to the later generations. It's embedded with all kinds of formations in order to challenge those whose consciousness has slipped within it. It might seem to be a casual glance from the head of the Zhang clan, but in truth, his consciousness had already slipped into the temporal mirror and destroyed all of the formations within it. Tantai Jinqing explained grimly. His consciousness slipped into the temporal mirror and destroyed all of the formations within it. The crowd narrowed their eyes in disbelief. The deeper one's comprehension of temporal laws was, the faster one would be able to escape from the temporal mirror. However, not only did the head of the Zhang clan escape from the temporal mirror, he even destroyed all of the formations within it. Just how deep was his comprehension of temporal laws in order to pull something like that off? Most likely, he has already reached the level of time quintessence. Tantai Jinqing addressed the doubt that was in everyone's mind. In a moment, the crowd fell silent. Time quintessence and spatial quintessence were at a different order to sword quintessence and the like. Even ancient sages would face great difficulties trying to comprehend those two quintessences. But a Saint Nine Dan lad actually managed to do it. It seems like the head of the Zhang clan possesses talent on par with the Luo clan's Luo Tianya. It won't be easy for the 100 schools of philosophers to accomplish its goals. Nangong Yuanfeng sighed deeply. It was no wonder Tantai Jinqing had left so hurriedly. Given the same cultivation realm, it was nigh impossible to defeat someone who had comprehended time quintessence, even if he was a sempiternal realm cultivator suppressing his cultivation. Leaving was indeed the wisest decision they could make. Otherwise, all they would face was humiliation. We have won. We actually defeated the experts of the 100 schools of philosophers. In contrast to the gloomy air hanging around Tantai Jinqing and the group from the 100 schools of philosophers, exhilarated cheers echoed throughout the Zhang clan. When they heard that the experts of the 100 schools of philosophers had come to challenge them, they had thought that they would have their dignity trampled upon. Who could have thought that their clan head would be able to drive them away so easily? This was something that they would not dare have imagined in the past. But what they had deemed impossible had really happened right before their eyes. I have won. Even Zhang Jiuxiao could hardly believe what had happened. To actually duel and win against a descendant of the philosophers. Had it been half a year ago, he never would have thought that he would be able to pull off something like this. In his mind, he could not help but feel deeply grateful to his teacher once more. It was his teacher who had helped him acquire everything that he possessed at this very moment. I want you to properly cultivate the 2 manuals I have imparted to you over the next few days. Try your best to comprehend time quintessence as soon as possible. Also, I want you to cultivate this cultivation technique accordingly. With this, you should be able to make a breakthrough very soon and raise your cultivation significantly. Zhang Xian looked at Zhang Jiuxiao sternly. You are the weakest of my students at the moment, so you have to work harder to advance your cultivation. I hope that you will be able to become a stout shield for mankind in the future, just like your seniors. Yes, teacher, I will not let you down. Zhang Jiuxiao clasped his fist. Zhang Xian nodded in satisfaction, following which, he turned his gaze toward the Xingming sword saints. Taking a deep breath, he called out, Father, Mother. The truth was that he had already acknowledged the 2 of them as his parents, but for some reason, he found it incredibly difficult addressing them as father and mother. However, he felt that it would be inappropriate to allow their relationship to continue this way. It was likely that he would work closely with the Xingming sword saints in the future to protect mankind from the otherworldly demons, especially since the 2 of them still wielded greater influence in the Zhang clan than him. It would not do for their relationship to remain awkward. Thus he bucked up his courage and did it. The Xingming sword saints were taken aback for a moment before irrepressible smiles crept onto their faces. They clenched their fists tightly in agitation as they called out, Xianer! They had been looking forward to this day, ever since their reunion. However, they knew that they had done their son wrong, so they had not dared to impose their expectations on him. They could only wish that the day would come when their child acknowledged them on his own accord. They did not think that their wish would come true so quickly. Even though the cultivation techniques that you practice are top-notch, the distress you have been under in the past 2 decades has caused some blockages in your meridians, preventing your Jinqi from flowing smoothly. I'll impart a method for resolving the blockages to you, so that you can achieve a breakthrough as soon as possible. Zhang Xian said. His parents might be the top experts of the master-teacher continent, but under the reflection of the Library of Heaven's path, there were still many flaws with their cultivation techniques and physical conditions. These flaws became the bottleneck that hindered the advancement of their cultivation. If they could resolve these problems, it would not take them too long to reach the peak of great sage. You are going to give us some pointers? Hearing their son's words, the eyebrows of the Xingming Sword Saints shot up in astonishment. Their son was only at St. Nine Dan Pinnacle at the moment. Was he really capable of offering pointers to great sage 3 Dan cultivators like them? It's not really pointers. I'm just pointing out a few flaws I have noticed in your cultivation, so as to resolve the traumas you have sustained. Zhang Xian explained with a smile. He had long compiled a book on them in the Library of Heaven's Path, but he just had not had time to sort out their conditions and offer them some pointers. Having said that, Zhang Xian took out 2 empty books and began writing on them. Soon he had already jotted down the flaws and problems that they were suffering from, as well as the solutions to resolving them. The Xingming Sword Saints took the books and flipped through them, and their bodies jolted in shock. There was nothing wrong with what their son had pointed out. Those were indeed the problems that they were facing. Zhang Xian turned to the other elders and instructed, I need the rest of you to execute a battle technique, so that I can offer you some pointers for your cultivation. With a war against the otherworldly demonic tribe just around the corner, it was of the utmost importance for him to raise the fighting prowess of the Zhang clan as much as possible. However, before the elders could do anything, a guard suddenly rushed in with an anxious look on his face. Clan head, bad news. The Luo clan has arrived at the entrance of Dracatiger City. After 3 days of flight, the crowd from the Luo clan had finally arrived. Knowing that he would have to face the Luo clan eventually, Zhang Xian instructed, let them in. Yes. The guard nodded before rushing out. The Luo clan sure is impudent. Did they not embarrass themselves enough the last time? Are they so desperate to make a fool out of themselves? It's hard to say. I heard that they have found themselves a clan head, who has comprehended the spatial quintessence of sealing. Most likely, they are here to cleanse themselves of the humiliation they suffered back at the engagement ceremony. Cleanse themselves of the humiliation? Humph. Just how far can their arrogance go? The name of their clan head is Luo Tianya, right? What right does he have to compete with our clan head? He's just a member of the side family, who managed to comprehend the spatial quintessence of sealing by sheer luck. Just how arrogant must he be to dare challenge our clan head? We must make sure to teach him a lesson that he'll never forget. Such discussions could be heard around the room. Hearing how the crowd from the Zhang clan were putting down Luo Tianya to prop him up, Zhang Xian suddenly felt incredibly exhausted. When they learned that the new head of the Luo clan was actually him, would they faint from shock? How should he deal with this matter in order to resolve the conflict between the 2 clans once and for all? If he told the Luo clan that he was Luo Tianya, the Luo clan would surely think that he was trying to humiliate them once more, especially after what had happened at the engagement ceremony. On the other hand, if he told the Zhang clan that he was Luo Tianya, the matter about him having a Luo clan bloodline purity level of 9 would convince them otherwise too. In the worst-case scenario, they might even think that his father had been cuckolded. What a frustrating situation to be in. Everyone wants to be outstanding, but they don't understand the woes of being too outstanding. All that comes with it is endless frustrations. After pondering for a moment, Zhang Xian was still unable to find a feasible solution to get him out of his current quandary, so he could only find a reason to excuse himself for the time being. I'll leave it to all of you to host the Luo clan for the time being. I suddenly had an epiphany and would like to cultivate right now. As long as he and Luo Tianya were not around, surely things would not get too far between the 2 clans. His presence would only complicate things. Go ahead. Leave the Luo clan to us. Sword Saint Xing replied with a nod. The reason behind the conflict between the Zhang clan and the Luo clan was the rejection of the engagement, And the primary culprit behind that was Zhang Xian. It would indeed be best for Zhang Xian to stay out of the Luo clan's sight, so as to avoid triggering them, especially when they were clearly still in the heat of their anger. After entrusting the problem to his father, Zhang Xian quickly led Luo Ruoxin to his residence. He settled her down in the adjacent room, before returning to his bedroom. With a thought, he entered the myriad ant-hive nest. With his deepened understanding of space, he was able to expand and reinforce the myriad ant-hive nest, making it far more resilient and larger than before. The entire folded space spanned several hundred li from one end to the other, and it was filled with countless buildings. In terms of size, it was already comparable to a major city. Zhang Xian swiftly found an empty clearing in the myriad ant-hive nest and sat down. With a thought, a massive corpse fell onto the ground, crushing the bluestone tiles underneath. A cloud of dust rose into the air. It was the corpse of the otherworldly demon ancient sage that he had killed back at the Harvest Valley City Seer Guild. It had been difficult for him to deposit it into the storage ring, but taking it out was much easier. He could do it even without the help of the Dragonbone Divine Spear. He had expended his 3 droplets of Kong Shi's blood. His golden pages had been used up, and Vicious was currently in hibernation. This meant that he had no life preservation means with him at the moment, and this was extremely dangerous considering the current state of affairs on the Master-Teacher continent. As such, it was of the utmost importance for him to forge the soulless metal humanoid as soon as possible. Should I see if I can enter the corpse first? Zhang Xian thought as he drew his primordial spirit out from his body. Even though the otherworldly demon ancient sage was already dead, its corpse still emanated a crushing pressure on beings around it. Even from a distance away, it felt as if a squall was blasting his way, putting his primordial spirit under such strain that it almost seemed like it would be torn apart. The might of an ancient sage is indeed not to be underestimated, Zhang Xian thought grimly. After tempering his primordial spirit under the pressure emanated by the Dragonbone Divine Spear, it had already become incredibly resilient. Even great sage cultivators would find it difficult to inflict any damage on his primordial spirit. Yet he was actually having difficulties approaching a mere corpse. This was truly inconceivable. Zhang Xian tried a few more times, but he was forced to retreat before he could come into contact with the corpse time and time again. In the end, he could only shake his head helplessly. In order to forge a soulless metal humanoid, his primordial spirit must first be able to enter the corpse. If he could not even come into contact with the corpse, how could he forge it? It seems like I'll have to raise my soul cultivation as soon as possible. If I could just make a breakthrough to Great Sage, I might be able to successfully enter the corpse, Zhang Xian thought as he returned his primordial spirit to his body. He quickly sorted out the urgent matters that he had to complete in his mind. First, I have to find the cultivation technique that Kong Shi left behind to push for a breakthrough to Great Sage. Second, I should try to take in more students, obtain their gratitude, and form more golden pages. Third, I need to push for a breakthrough in my soul cultivation, so as to forge this corpse. While Zhang Xian knew that the prowess of the golden page was formidable, he had not thought that it would actually be capable of smashing an ancient sage as well. After all, ancient sages were symbols of invincibility in the hearts of all cultivators. Cultivators who had not reached an equivalent level could be crushed by a single thought from them. So those who had not reached ancient sage, yet would never dream of opposing an ancient sage. But he actually managed to kill an ancient sage with ease, using the golden page. There would be no better life preservation method than that. So he would really have to try to obtain as many golden pages as possible. The first and the second are rather difficult to accomplish at the moment. But for the third, I think I might just be able to do it. He was not too certain about the circumstances in the Master-Teacher Pavilion at the moment, so it would be particularly dangerous for him to head there, especially since he had lost his trump cards. If those who were in collusion with the otherworldly demonic tribe sabotaged him, he might just lose his life there. Thus, he was not too keen on heading there at the moment. As for the second, as powerful as the golden pages were, The issue was that the formation of the golden pages was an extremely spontaneous process. He had previously deduced that its formation was triggered by the gratitude of his students, but it did not seem to happen for certain every single time. It might be due to the extent of their gratitude, or perhaps some other factors. But in any case, it was not safe for him to bank on that. Thus, after some contemplation, it seemed like only the third was within his control at the moment. Having clarified such thoughts, Zhang Xian leaped out of the myriad ant-hive nest and left his residence. He found one of the elders of the Zhang clan and instructed, "Bring me to the library." As the clan head, it went without saying that he had the authority to enter the Zhang clan's library freely. He did not have to snoop around like he had done before. For hours later, Zhang Xian walked out of the library with his head hanging in disappointment. Although the Zhang clan was the #1 sage clan on the master-teacher continent, it did not have too many advanced books relating to soul. While he did manage to gather quite a few new books, he was still unable to perfect the great sage One Dan Heaven's Path divine art. In other words, he was not able to cultivate it yet. Sighing deeply, he turned to the elder who had brought him over and asked, "How's it going with the Luo clan?" Reporting to the clan head, the Luo clan said that they have come to challenge you to a duel, but it happens that their clan head, the newly inaugurated Luo Tianya, had some urgent affairs to attend to, so he wasn't able to come over with them. So, we have settled them down in the guest accommodations for the time being, the elder replied. And that's good. Seeing that the situation did not blow up, Zhang Xian heaved a sigh of relief. He pondered for a moment before asking once more, "Are there any occupations or powers that specialize in souls in the vicinity of the Zhang clan?" Occupations or powers that specialize in souls? The elder thought deeply for a moment before replying. The Tupsicarian Guild headquarters is located in the Tupsicarian city, roughly 40,000 li away from the Zhang clan. Due to the nature of their occupation, they are quite adept in the topic of soul. However, if we are speaking of the power that commands the deepest understanding of souls, it would indubitably be the Jiang clan of the 3 premier clans. Their predecessors comprehended soul quintessence, and their home base is located half a day's journey away from our Zhang clan. The Jiang clan. Zhang Xian pondered for a moment before slapping his forehead in realization. Why didn't he think of that earlier? Of the 3 premier clans, the Zhang clan was adept in temporal arts, the Luo clan was well-versed in spatial arts, and the Jiang clan specialized in soul arts. When the soul oracles were eradicated from the master-teacher continent back then, the heritage of soul cultivation nearly vanished completely. It was the founder of the Jiang clan who stood up at that moment and resuscitated soul cultivation on the master-teacher continent. With his comprehension of the soul quintessence, he created countless formidable soul arts and became one of the strongest experts in his era. Speaking of which, he wasn't completely unacquainted with the Jiang clan either. He had met the head of the Jiang clan, Jiang Fangyu, during the engagement ceremony with the Luo clan. He had also crossed blows with the top prodigy of the Jiang clan, Jiang Feifei, during the Celestial Designer trial, while challenging the Tower of Master Teachers back at the Sanctum of Sages too. Just that, he didn't think that the Jiang clan would be located just half a day's journey away from the Zhang clan. Clan head, do you intend to pick up soul-related techniques? The elder asked curiously. I have advanced my cultivation too swiftly in recent days, and that has resulted in instability in my primordial spirit. I was thinking of learning some soul cultivation techniques to reinforce my soul before pushing for higher realms. Zhang Xian replied. Hearing those words, the elder nodded in agreement. Such problems did occur if one were to advance one's cultivation too quickly. The first time their clan head came to the Zhang clan, he was only at St. 7 Dan Phantasmal Space Realm. Yet within such a short span of time, he had already reached St. 9 Dan Pinnacle. That was indubitably a breakneck pace. Of course, the problems from advancing his cultivation so quickly might not be very apparent at the moment, but trying to build upon unstable foundations would indubitably cause him a huge amount of trouble in the future. Learning the clan head's intent, the elder remarked, "Our Zhang clan doesn't really have a close relationship with the Jiang clan. However, as fellow premier clans, I don't think the Jiang clan would refuse your request as long as the books you require doesn't violate the privacy of their heritage." Hearing those words, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up in realization. Indeed, he was no longer the nobody he was. Soul arts might have been the most tightly guarded secret of the Jiang clan. But as the head of the Zhang clan, the head of the Sanctum of Sages, and Yang Shi Sr., if he were to request to browse through the more superficial soul art manuals in their collection, it was unlikely that they would refuse his request. After bidding the elder farewell, he informed Luo Ruoxin that he would be heading out for a moment before whipping out his Dragonbone Divine Spear to tear open a dimension rift and head off. He had obtained the precise location of the Jiang clan from the elder he had chatted with earlier. Flitting at a neck-breaking speed, it didn't take long for him to arrive at the suburbs of a city similar to the Zhang clan. This city spanned over many mu, boasting a scale greater than that of the Empire Alliance. The Jiang clan, one of the 3 premier clans, a behemoth on the master-teacher continent. Zhang Xian scanned the city and swiftly noticed the many defensive formations erected around the place. He couldn't help but compliment. It seems like every single one of the premier clans wields power that shouldn't be underestimated. He had been to the Luo clan and the Zhang clan, and they had all kinds of formations that would put even great sage cultivators in a bad position if they were to charge in recklessly. Such was clearly the case for the Jiang clan as well. However, it just happened that formations posed no threat to him at all. Through the Library of Heaven's path, all he could see were hulking flaws after hulking flaws. After looking around for a moment, he was just about to hand his name scroll to the guards stationed at the entrance of the Jiang clan to have them report his arrival, when he suddenly narrowed his eyes in alarm. He hurriedly dashed into a nearby shrub to hide. Through the lush shrubbery, he looked into the sky above and saw a figure appearing in the aerial space above the Jiang clan, following which the head of the Jiang clan, Jiang Fangyu, personally rushed over to welcome him, and the two of them descended to the ground together. Why is he here? Does this mean that the Jiang clan is colluding with the otherworldly demons too? Zhang Xian thought lividly. The figure who had just appeared was no other than the scholarly young man whom he had met back at the White Creek Mountain and the Harvest Valley City Seer Guild. Why would the scholarly young man appear here? The fact that he was personally welcomed by the head of the Jiang clan suggested a peculiar relation between the two of them. Let me take a look. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Xian scanned his surroundings with the eye of insight before heading forward. He might not have too many trump cards at the moment. If he were to engage the scholarly young man in his current state, it would surely end in his defeat. However, he was still confident in his ability to hide his presence. Besides, having comprehended the spatial quintessence of sealing and time quintessence of acceleration, he was confident that he would be at least able to escape, even if he were no match from them. Hula! Countless spatial ripples diffused in the space in front of Zhang Xian as he strutted boldly through the main gates of the Jiang clan. There were plenty of guards stationed at the doorstep of the Jiang clan, and their cultivation ranged from Saint 3 Dan to Saint 4 Dan. Yet, not a single one of them noticed Zhang Xian, as if he didn't even exist. This was another skillful manipulation of the spatial laws. Through sealing an area around him, and preventing any energy from entering or leaving this area, he would be able to prevent even light from revealing his presence. As long as one's cultivation was beneath him, it would be impossible for one to notice his presence. After walking through several corridors, he finally came to a halt before a majestic hall. Right ahead was the area where the Jiang Fangyu and the scholarly young man had landed at. As deep as his comprehension of spatial laws was, he dared not to come too close. Thus, he found a location to conceal his figure before looking into the hall. On the inside, he saw the two men standing opposite one another, seemingly discussing some important matters. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Xian focused his attention into the hall. Soon, he began to hear snippets of their conversation. News that you have? I understand. The scholarly young man nodded and said, "I'll leave the arrangements to you. Nothing must go wrong. If we were to succeed for this, it would bring a new day upon us. The dreams that we have harbored for many years would finally come to be." "Yes, I understand." Jiang Fengyu nodded hurriedly. "It's good that you understand. You must take precautions too. The upheaval will be happening very soon, and a huge war will be inevitable. You have to prepare yourselves to make a move at any moment." After saying those words, the scholarly young man shook his head grimly. He quickly bade his farewell before leaving the vicinity. Even as the scholarly young man departed, Zhang Xian still dared not to move carelessly. He reined in his aura as tightly as possible, while folding the space around him firmly, not daring to allow any leeway in whatever that could possibly betray his presence. As he left, the scholarly young man glanced downward for a moment, but it seemed to just be a sweeping look. It took only a few moments for him to vanish from sight, disappearing in some other direction. "Hi!" Watching the departure of the scholarly young man, Jiang Fengyu sighed deeply. With a complicated look in his eyes, he walked out of the hall. Zhang Xian figured that the other party was probably going to make whatever arrangements he had agreed on with the scholarly young man. The Jiang clan is in collusion with those bunch of scoundrels too. Have they betrayed mankind as well? Watching as Jiang Fengyu walked away, the frown on Zhang Xian's forehead scrunched tighter and tighter together. The Jiang clan was one of the 3 premier clans. While their standing was beneath that of the Zhang clan and the Luo clan, they were still highly respected in the master-teacher continent, and their ranks were filled with many master teachers. Why would they betray mankind and collude with those bunch of scoundrels too? He had met the scholarly young man twice so far. While he was unable to see through the other party's true appearance, the fact that the other party had close ties with otherworldly demons was a direct hint at his true identity. Even if the other party wasn't an otherworldly demon, the fact that he was in cahoots with them meant that he was a traitor of mankind. And for the head of the Jiang clan to have a secret discussion with the other party at this juncture, it was truly hard for Zhang Xian not to suspect anything. It would bring a new day upon us. A huge war will be inevitable. Just what in the world could they be up to? Are they conspiring something against the Master-Teacher Pavilion? Or perhaps the entire continent? Zhang Xian clenched his fists tightly together. He was still unable to figure out what their plans were. But the fact that they had stolen Vicious' upper body and brought over several otherworldly demon ancient sages to the Master-Teacher continent showed that they had great ambitions in mind. If something were to happen to the Master-Teacher continent, everything that he cared about would be in peril. Be it the Zhang clan, the Luo clan, the Xianxian faction, the Hongyuan Master-Teacher Academy. Once the nest was destroyed, there would be no egg in the nest that would be able to remain safe. A conspiracy between the Jiang clan and the otherworldly demonic tribe could deal a huge setback to mankind. Since he had noticed it in advance, he would have to stop it at all costs. I'll have to discuss the matter with my parents to decide on a suitable course of action to deal with the Jiang clan. Zhang Xian shook his head grimly. If they couldn't root the Jiang clan's influence in a single move, they would swiftly go into hiding. With the massive influence the Jiang clan wielded across the Master-Teacher continent, their constant sabotage from the shadows would surely be a huge setback to mankind if a war with the otherworldly demonic tribe were to break out. In any case, since the Jiang clan has betrayed mankind, there's no need for me to stand on ceremony with them. Let me head to their library to collect their books first. With such a thought in mind, Zhang Xian quickly scanned the area around him before heading off in a certain direction. A moment later, he arrived before an imposing building. There was a plaque at the entrance of the building with 3 massive words gleaming on it. Jiang Clan Repository. This should be it, Zhang Xian thought. While he had often snuck around to collect books in the past, ever since he became the head of the Hongyuan Master-Teacher Academy, he had resolved himself to stop doing so. However, since the Jiang clan had already chosen to betray mankind, there was no need to uphold principles and values toward them. Zhang Xian walked up to the gates and tapped them lightly, opening a small passageway in the formation protecting the building. Without any hesitation he walked in. After mastering the 4-dan heavenly art of dimension unravel, most seals and formations had become nothing more than ornaments to him. There is indeed quite a large collection of manuals relating to souls here. Zhang Xian muttered delightedly beneath his breath, as he quickly scanned through the books on the first level. However, most of the books on the first level were not too profound, so Zhang Xian could not be bothered to collect them. Thus he quickly made his way to the next level. The soul manuals on the second level were of a higher tier. Nevertheless, with a quick look through, he found that they were still too elementary for his current soul cultivation level. As such, he moved up 5 levels at once, stopping only at the 7th level. The number of books on the 7th level was considerably smaller. All in all, there were only several dozen bookshelves filled with tens of thousands of books. With a quick sweep, Zhang Xian collected all of the books into his library of Heaven's Path, before swiftly browsing through them. A crease emerged between his brows. Why are there so many books relating to soul oracles? To his bewilderment, he found that most of the books actually detailed soul cultivation techniques that should have been unique to soul oracles. There was a fundamental difference between the soul cultivation techniques practiced by soul oracles and modern soul cultivation techniques practiced by cultivators nowadays. The modern soul cultivation techniques that most cultivators practiced served to temper one's soul. On the other hand, the soul cultivation techniques of the soul oracle formed a full heritage that was intricately linked with the soulless metal humanoids, soul rituals, and the like. To make an analogy, if modern soul cultivation techniques corresponded to physicians, the techniques of the soul oracles corresponded to poison masters. While there was no doubt that both sets of cultivation techniques were targeted at the soul, their cultivation methods differed vastly from one another. As one of the 3 premier clans, the Jiang clan had always been held in high regards by the world. Why would they have so many soul oracle cultivation techniques? Could it be that the founder of the Jiang clan was a successor of the soul oracles? Zhang Xian's eyelids twitched as this notion surfaced in his mind. The soul oracles had been annihilated, and their heritage had been erased from the world. This was a known fact throughout the entire master-teacher continent. Yet the Jiang clan had actually retained so many manuals regarding the heritage of the soul oracles. It was truly hard to believe that there were no ties between the two. With many doubts in his mind, Zhang Xian moved on to the next floor. There were even fewer books on the 8th level, but most of them still stemmed from the heritage of the soul oracles. If the Jiang clan has its roots from the soul oracle, that could explain why they would choose to betray mankind. Zhang Xian thought with narrowed eyes. The vicious means of the soul oracles formed only a part of the reason that the master-teacher pavilion had decided to annihilate them. More importantly, it was because they had chosen to betray mankind to collude with the otherworldly demonic tribe. There were also many inhumane aspects in the heritage of the poison masters, but the master-teacher pavilion had only chosen to isolate them instead of going all out to massacre their forces. If there was no mistake in his deduction, it explained why the Jiang clan had ties with the scholarly young man as well. After collecting the books, Zhang Xian proceeded on to the final floor of the Jiang clan repository. There were even fewer books there, just a small handful. With a quick glance, he collected them into the library of Heaven's Path. Compile. Without much hesitation, he quickly compiled the books that he had collected with the cultivation technique that Lu Chong had passed on to him. 2 books materialized before him in the library of Heaven's Path. Tapping lightly on the 2 books, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up in excitement. I have managed to perfect the soul cultivation techniques for Great Sage 1-dan Introspective Convalescence Realm and Great Sage 2-dan Aureate Body Realm. There are still some flaws in the 2 remaining realms, but at the very least, I have managed to resolve most of the issues with them. There was a difference in achieving a breakthrough to Great Sage 1-dan for one's Jinqi cultivation and soul cultivation. For Jinqi cultivation, there was no standard formula that a cultivator could follow to make a breakthrough to Great Sage 1-dan. As such, one had to slowly figure out a feasible method of doing so. On the other hand, there were no meridians or the like within one's soul. As such, a breakthrough to Great Sage 1 Dan for soul cultivation only required the cultivator to strengthen their soul and enhance their control over their soul energy. I'll push for a breakthrough in my soul cultivation, Zhang Xian thought. He quickly set up a barrier in the corner of the room before entering the myriad ant hive nest. After swiftly finding an empty clearing, he laid out his cultivation resources around the area, following which, he took a seat on the ground before studying the newly compiled Great Sage 1 Dan Heaven's Path soul art in his mind. Some time later, he drew his primordial spirit out from his glabella. With a grasp of his hand, the cultivation resources flew over to him. Hong Long. The cultivation resources shattered simultaneously, and concentrated spiritual energy gushed into the surroundings. Zhang Xian quickly absorbed the spiritual energy into his primordial spirit. He had obtained these cultivation resources from the Luo clan's treasure vault. Putting aside using them to advance his soul cultivation, they would suffice even for a breakthrough in his Jinshi cultivation to Great Sage 1 Dan. Gone were the days when he had to rely miserably on lightning tribulations to gather the energy required for his breakthrough. With the nourishment of the rich influx of spiritual energy, his primordial spirit grew stronger and stronger. It swiftly overcame its bottleneck and advanced into uncharted territories. Wang. As he tempered his primordial spirit with the spiritual energy that he had absorbed, it slowly took on a crystalline appearance, becoming much clearer than before. A brilliant luminescence of many colors glimmered around him, creating an image reminiscent of an enlightened immortal. The soul of a typical soul oracle would still remain turbid and chilling even after making a breakthrough to Great Sage, but the soul cultivation technique that Zhang Xian practiced was the Heaven's Path soul art. Furthermore, his soul had been tempered by lightning innumerable times, causing a qualitative metamorphosis in his soul. At this moment, his soul was already devoid of the usual chilling yin aura that a soul oracle would possess. Even if the 9-star master teachers from the Master Teacher Pavilion witnessed this sight, none of them would associate his primordial spirit with those of the soul oracles. Feeling the changes in his primordial spirit, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up in excitement. Finally, Great Sage 1 Dan introspective convalescence realm. His visit to the Jiang clan had truly paid off. If not for those books that he had browsed through, who knew how long it would have taken him to make a breakthrough in his soul cultivation. Continue. Even after achieving a breakthrough in his soul cultivation to the introspective convalescence realm, he could still vaguely sense that his primordial spirit was not strong enough to enter the corpse of the otherworldly demon ancient sage yet. Without much hesitation, he continued absorbing the spiritual energy around him and pushed determinedly for the next realm. For hours later, Zhang Xian's rate of absorption came to a halt, and he slowly opened his eyes. I have reached introspective convalescence realm consummation. Unlike for Saint, each realm in Great Sage was divided into 6 cultivation stages, namely primary, intermediate, advanced, pinnacle, perfection, and consummation. Reaching consummation meant that he had reached the very peak of this realm. It's indeed much more difficult to push for a breakthrough in Great Sage as compared to Saint. Back then, 2 hours would suffice for me to advance a cultivation realm, but it's taking me 2 times longer now. He had never thought that the day would come when he would require 4 hours just to advance his cultivation by an entire realm, and it seemed like it would only become more and more arduous the higher he climbed. He shuddered to imagine that a day would come where he would require an entire day to advance a cultivation realm. How terrifying! Cultivation sure isn't easy. If even a prodigy like me requires 4 hours to advance this far, how much longer would it take other cultivators? Zhang Xian shook his head and sighed. Forget it. No matter how exhausting it'll be, I should get this over and done with. I should at least try to reach Aurate Body Realm consummation before the sun sets. While lamenting how it was getting harder and harder to advance his cultivation, he carried on cultivating. No matter how long it would take him, in order to raise his fighting prowess, he had no choice but to carry on with this incredibly tedious and monotonous task. Who asked him to embark on this arduous path? No matter how exhausted he was, he could only grit his teeth and hang on. 10 minutes later, Zhang Xian halted his cultivation with a helpless look on his face. I knew that it wouldn't be so easy, he thought as he rubbed his glabella in distress. He had thought that he would be able to easily push for a breakthrough to Great Sage 2 Dan or it Body Realm consummation, with the cultivation resources that he had obtained from the Luo clan. But who could have known that the spiritual energy would be insufficiently pure for him to make a breakthrough? These resources would have been sufficient for anyone else to cultivate up to Great Sage for Dan's sempiternal realm. However, what Zhang Xian cultivated was not any ordinary soul cultivation technique, but the Heaven's Path soul art. Furthermore, his primordial spirit had been tempered by lightning, thus making it nearly devoid of any impurities. As a result, even though the purity of the spiritual energy in the cultivation resources was not too low, it was still insufficient for him. And having lost his source of energy, there was no way he could gather the momentum required to make a breakthrough. It had not been easy for him to compile the Heaven's Path soul art, but to think that he would be forced to stop his cultivation just because his source of spiritual energy was not sufficiently pure. Facing such a situation, he could only sigh helplessly. Well, I was hesitant to take too much from the Luo clan, because Luo Gan's hen was following behind me, but I don't think my conscience would hurt at all stealing from the Jiang clan. Since they have already betrayed mankind, the more I take from them, the less harm they will be able to inflict on mankind. Zhang Xian thought as a grin crept onto his face. Even though he had the authority to use the resources from the Luo clan, he could not possibly just take all the good items from the treasure vault. But with the Jiang clan, he had no such considerations at all. Given that they had already betrayed mankind, any resources that they had would only bolster the enemy. Since that was the case, there was no need for him to stand on ceremony with them. With such thoughts in mind, Zhang Xian quickly returned his primordial spirit back into his body before leaving the myriad ant-hive nest. It was still perfectly quiet on the outside when he returned to the Jiang clan repository. It was apparent that no one had thought that an intruder would be able to breach their defensive formation and access their books. I recall seeing their treasure vault while making my way here. It should be in that direction. I should head over there to take a look. Through his skillful manipulation of space, he managed to leave the Jiang clan repository safely without alerting anyone. After confirming a direction, he quickly made his way over. It did not take him too long to arrive at his destination. The seals placed on the treasure vault were clearly much stronger and more secure compared to the library. The seals were layered over one another in a complex manner, making it difficult to decipher. Zhang Xian was just about to use the Library of Heaven's Path on the seals to exploit their flaws and slip into the treasure vault when he heard footsteps coming from nearby. He darted to a remote corner, and with a wave of his hand, he swiftly set up a spatial barrier around him. Right as he was done, he saw two figures walking over. To his surprise, they were familiar faces. The figure on the left was the middle-aged man, whom he had just seen a few hours ago, clan head Jiang Fangyu. The figure on the right was a tall young lady, who carried an air of valiance through her demeanor. She was the inceptive sage of the Celestial Designer Guild, Jiang Feifei. Jiang Feifei seemed to have been dragged back by Jiang Fangyu, and she had an unhappy frown on her face. She groaned in protest, "Father, I allowed you to squander your time learning all that celestial designer nonsense in the past. But the circumstances are different now. The master-teacher continent will be undergoing a massive change very soon, and there could very well be an upheaval. As the prodigy who possesses the purest bloodline in our Jiang clan, you have to bear this responsibility." Jiang Fangyu lectured sternly. "Father, it's not as if you don't know my current level of cultivation. I'm still a long way off from reaching Saint 8 Dan, so even if I want to shoulder the burden of the Jiang clan, what can I possibly do?" Jiang Feifei complained reluctantly. "The strength of our Jiang clan is derived not from our Jinqi cultivation, but our soul cultivation. Due to your pure bloodline, your soul has always been far stronger than your peers. If you could comprehend our founder's soul quintessence, You'll be able to inherit the complete heritage of our founder and experience rapid growth in your fighting prowess. Jiang Fengyu explained. With an expectant gleam in his eyes, he continued. I'm not joking around with you. This matter concerns the very survival of our Jiang clan. If things go wrong, our Jiang clan could very well face extinction. We can't afford to have you throwing a tantrum at a crucial moment. All right. I get it. Seeing how severely her father was making things out to be, Jiang Feifei could only nod her head helplessly. I'll try my best, all right? However, you should also know that it's incredibly difficult to grasp the soul quintessence, such that many of our predecessors have failed to do so. I don't think that I stand much of a chance. You'll just have to do your best. We have just received intelligence that there are hints that suggest that Zhang Xian from the Zhang clan has comprehended the time quintessence, and Luo Tianya from the Luo clan has been confirmed to have comprehended the spatial quintessence. Of the three premier clans, our Jiang clan is the only one that is lagging behind. Jiang Fengyu released a troubled sigh. That Zhang Xian you speak of is a ridiculously talented prodigy. Despite his young age, he's already the head of the Zhang clan and the sanctum of sages. It's no surprise that he was able to comprehend the time quintessence. However, who is that Luo Tianya you spoke of? Jiang Feifei asked doubtfully. So far, the Luo clan had not officially announced the inauguration of their new clan head. As such, only the top echelons of the Jiang clan were aware of the matter so far. Furthermore, Jiang Feifei spent most of her time in the sanctum of sages instead of the Jiang clan, and she had not formed her own faction. As such, it was inevitable that she would be unaware of this matter. According to the intelligence we have received, Luo Tianya is from the side family of the Luo clan. It seems like he has maintained a low profile in the Luo clan all along, but his sudden comprehension of the spatial quintessence of sealing has brought him into the limelight. After a bloodline test, it was shown that he has a bloodline purity of 9. On top of that, he even defeated the descendants of ancient sage Zirong of the 100 schools of philosophers. Jiang Fengyu explained. Even as he spoke, there was an incredulous look in his eyes. It seemed like he still bore some skepticism toward the existence of this figure, who had appeared out of nowhere. But if the matter was true, he really had to say that the Luo clan was really too lucky. It was not too long ago that the Zhang clan had found their missing young prodigy, and realized that the latter already wielded astounding influence on the continent, thus causing the reputation of the Zhang clan to soar to new heights. Shortly after that, a person who had comprehended the spatial quintessence of sealing appeared in the Luo clan. Given that their Jiang clan was lagging behind the pack, it was inevitable for Jiang Fengyu to get anxious. Luo Tianya was from the side family of the Luo clan? Father, why don't you try looking among our side family as well? We might just have some extraordinarily talented clan members who have comprehended the soul quintessence. If you find one, you won't have to worry about finding a successor anymore. Hearing his daughter's words, Jiang Fengyu struck her head furiously and berated. How in the world did you manage to think of something as ridiculous as that? If even you, a core member of the Jiang clan, are unable to comprehend the soul quintessence, how do you expect those of the side family to do so? Are you dreaming? It's already a miracle in itself for a Luo Tianya to appear in the Luo clan. Do you really think that experts of that caliber can be found that easily? Why are you denying the talents of our side family? If other clans have such formidable prodigies in their side family, we might just have some too. Jiang Feifei grumbled with a pout. Despite her prodigious talent in soul cultivation, she was not fond of cultivating. Her interests lay in designing, and she was adept in the field as well. Otherwise, she would not have been able to become the inceptive sage of the Celestial Designer Guild. Unfortunately, it was apparent that the Jiang clan would not permit her to pursue her interest. If such a figure truly exists, I'll invite him over right now and hand over the position of clan head to him. Hearing his daughter's words, Jiang Fengyu harumphed impatiently. All right, stop dreaming of the impractical and go in. Your job right now is to sit in front of the Jiang clan's jade hieroglyph and comprehend the soul quintessence as soon as possible. Don't bother thinking about other things. Otherwise, if you fail, in order to ensure that our clan is able to deal with the impending upheaval, we'll have no choice but to betroth you to a stronger power in order to ensure the preservation of our Jiang clan." Hearing that she would be forced to marry if she failed to comprehend the soul quintessence, Jiang Feifei's eyes widened in horror as she hurriedly shook her head. "Father, I don't want to marry. This matter isn't up to you anymore. The peril we'll face is far greater than what we have ever been through. I'm afraid that our Jiang clan won't be able to survive this upheaval alone given our current strength." Jiang Fengyu sighed deeply as he gazed at his daughter with a resigned look. "However, you don't have to worry. Even if I betroth you to someone else, he will be either Zhang Xian of the Zhang clan or Luo Tinya of the Luo clan. In any case, I won't allow any grievances to come upon you." "I don't want to marry that Zhang Xian. All he does is to humble brag his strength and crush the confidence of others. Furthermore, he even rejected the little princess of the Luo clan publicly, not paying any considerations for the other party's dignity at all." Jiang Feifei harumphed furiously. Zhang Xian's complexion darkened. "I humble bragged. I crushed the confidence of others? Please, I am already incredibly low profile, all right? Otherwise, I would have overshadowed all of you so much that none of you will be able to see the light of the day. Furthermore, what rights do you have to be complaining about me? You are speaking as if I'm interested in marrying you. You wish. If that's the case, I guess it'll have to be Luo Tinya then. It might be difficult on you though. I heard that he has quite an old appearance despite his relatively young age, and his facial features look as if someone has smashed the door in his face. Furthermore, it seems like he's already attached." Jiang Fengyu said. Zhang Xian nearly exploded on the spot. "Are you saying I'm ugly? Ugly your head. You are the one who is ugly. Your entire family is ugly. My Luo Tinya might not be dashing, but he's at least decent looking. I refuse to marry anyone." Hearing that Luo Tinya was already attached, Jiang Feifei could feel her final string of sanity being pulled taut, on the verge of snapping at any moment. "If you don't want to marry anyone, you'll have no choice but to comprehend the soul quintessence. Feifei, I don't want to force you into anything, but for the Jiang clan, I have no other choice either." Seeing that his threat was working, Jiang Fengyu sighed deeply and said, I understand." Jiang Feifei could tell that her father was intentionally trying to scare her, but there was some truth in what he was saying. If someone in the main family was unable to pull her weight, the greatest way she could contribute to the clan was through a political marriage. In order not to marry that Zhang Xian, I'll have to give it my all then. Jiang Feifei clenched her jaws tightly together. Zhang Xian had no idea what to make of the situation anymore. "Am I that detestable? In order not to marry me, you are going to set your mind to cultivating as hard as you can. Is my reputation that bad? Alright, go on." Jiang Fengyu ushered her into the treasure vault. With a look reminiscent of a soldier marching to her death, Jiang Feifei walked up to the treasure vault and used a unique token to release the seal. "That's the grade 9 pinnacle ether ascension concealing dragon formation," Zhang Xian thought. Dragons were known for their ability to adapt their situation flexibly. Large, they could devastate. Small, they could ambush. Ascend, they could soar beyond the atmosphere. Conceal, they could mask themselves amidst spatial ripples. For this reason, dragons were extremely difficult beings to deal with. This was the rationale behind the naming of the formation as well. To use such an advanced formation to seal the treasure vault, it seemed like there was plenty of good stuff inside. You can only rely on yourself to comprehend the soul quintessence. May the heavens bless you, so that you'll be able to reach a height that few in the Jiang clan has ever reached before. Otherwise, I'll really have no choice but to betroth you to Zhang Xian." Jiang Fengyu gazed quietly as his daughter's silhouette disappeared into the treasure vault before shaking his head and leaving the area. The heck, not expecting to receive another insult in such a roundabout manner, Zhang Xian felt completely stifled. Forget it. Let me head in to see what treasures there are inside. They should have known that retribution would come to them when they chose to betray mankind. Tossing aside the unhappiness bottled in his heart, Zhang Xian walked warily over to the treasure vault. If he didn't know what the formation was, he might have still required the help of the Library of Heaven's Path. However, he had already seen through the nature of the formation earlier when Jiang Feifei entered. Thus, with just his eye of insight and deep understanding of formations, he could slip past the formation easily and enter the treasure vault. He casually walked around the perimeter of the treasure vault and kicked a few points here and there. After which, he made his way to the area where Jiang Feifei had entered the treasure vault from and walked into the premises too. As soon as he entered the treasure vault, he activated his spatial prowess to seal the space around him, thus preventing others from sensing his presence. Jiang Feifei had just entered the premises not too long ago, and he had no intentions of having a touching reunion with her inside. For one, it would reflect badly on him and the Zhang clan if he were to be found sneaking into the treasure vault of another major power, especially since the treachery of the Jiang clan wasn't revealed yet. Besides, he wouldn't want to alarm the Jiang clan either. Unlike the treasure vault of the Luo clan, where artifacts seemed to be randomly scattered around the area, Zhang Xian found himself standing in the midst of a vast hall. At the very center of the room was a jade wall which spanned roughly several dozen meters in length. He couldn't tell exactly what kind of jade material the wall was made of, but it had a smooth and glistening appearance. Vaguely, he felt spiritual energy pulsating within the jade wall. Jiang Feifei, who had entered a few minutes ahead of him, was standing roughly 10 meters away from the jade wall, staring at the jade wall intently. Her body was trembling nonstop, and cold sweat was pouring down her forehead. There was a massive character inscribed on the jade wall, and it induced an indescribable sensation within one. Just by glancing at the jade wall, Zhang Xian felt a powerful attraction force drawing his primordial spirit in. At the same time, the jade wall was emanating immense pressure, threatening to dissipate one's primordial spirit. It's the hieroglyph of the soul oracles. Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes coldly. It would have been nigh impossible for ordinary cultivators to recognize the massive character inscribed on the jade wall. But having inherited the heritage of the soul oracles, he knew that the character was inscribed using the unique hieroglyph of the soul oracles. Soul. As a crucial aspect of the heritage of the soul oracles, this hieroglyph harnessed great power over souls. The hieroglyph seems to harness the method to comprehending the soul quintessence. It's probably left behind by the founder of the Jiang clan. Zhang Xian nodded in realization. It was no wonder why Jiang Fangyu had brought his daughter here, to comprehend the soul quintessence. The pressure of the hieroglyph would allow one to temper one's soul, and its conception was important in comprehending the soul quintessence. In a sense, it had a similar purpose to the sword character on the wall of the Zhang clan. I'll just leave her to do whatever she wants here. Meanwhile, I'll head to the upper floors to take a look. Zhang Xian had already compiled the books relating to the soul quintessence into a Heaven's Path manual. He was just too busy trying to raise his soul cultivation that he didn't have the time to cultivate it earlier. While the pressure coming from the jade wall would be hard for most cultivators to bear, something of this extent wasn't enough to faze him anymore. Besides, his purpose here was not to cultivate, but to find suitable cultivation resources to support his soul cultivation. He didn't have the leisure to be wasting time here. The layout of the second floor was vastly different from the first floor. Many shelves were placed in neat rows in the room, and countless treasures were placed neatly on them. It seems like the wealth of the Jiang clan doesn't pale in comparison to the Luo clan at all. Zhang Xian chuckled softly as he looked at the treasures laid before him with glowing eyes. Since he had already gone through the trouble to make his way in here, he wouldn't hold back with the Jiang clan. Without any regards to whether they were valuable or not, Zhang Xian extended his spiritual perception across all of the shelves on the second floor. Keep. Hula. All of the treasures on this floor were kept into his storage ring. With a gleeful smile, Zhang Xian skipped his way joyfully up to the third floor. Were it to be any other power, no matter how much the treasures they had moved him, he would have made sure to hold himself back. After all, he was a master teacher. He had his own dignity and pride to uphold. Well, It was a different story regarding books. What was the use of knowledge if it was just going to be kept in a musky library, not effectively utilized to bring prosperity to the world? Besides, he had only compiled copies of them in the Library of Heaven's Path. It was not as if he had taken the physical copy of the books, so it couldn't be considered as stealing. Probably, however, it was a different thing if he were to take their material possession. That was an act frowned upon by all master teachers worldwide. However, it would be a different matter if the person he was stealing from was a traitor of mankind. That would be equivalent to depriving the enemies of their resources, and it was considered as a heroic deed. The treasures on the third floor were clearly much more valuable than those on the second floor. Zhang Xian swiftly swept them into his storage ring before heading up. The same happened for the fourth floor, the fifth floor, the sixth floor. Very soon, he arrived at the highest floor, the ninth floor. Compared to the floors beneath, the ninth floor appeared particularly empty. There was nothing except for a stone platform roughly half a chi wide, and a seal floating directly above of it. Zhang Xian couldn't discern what the seal was, but its very presence exerted tremendous pressure on his primordial spirit. He tried to approach the seal, but the incredible pressure halted him in his footsteps. What is this seal? A perplexed frown sat on Zhang Xian's forehead. Having advanced his soul cultivation to great sage 1 Dan introspective convalescence realm, ordinary soul offense shouldn't be able to faze him anymore. Yet, the seal before him was actually able to leave him with a suffocating sensation in his chest. Without a doubt, the seal was no ordinary artifact. Zhang Xian circled around the stone platform when something suddenly caught his eye. There seemed to be some words inscribed here. 16 cm. There were a few words inscribed on a certain side of the stone platform. These words were written with the hieroglyphs of the soul oracles, and they induced an uncanny feeling when viewed from afar. Grasp the quintessence and seize the seal of souls. Zhang Xian was able to decipher the meaning of the hieroglyphs on the stone platform. Through the soul oracle manuals that he had acquired from Mo Hunsheng, he was able to achieve a decent level of proficiency in the language. The seal floating on top must be the seal of souls. I can't really tell what tier it is, but it seems to be a rather powerful artifact, Zhang Xian thought. He could not tell exactly what tier the seal of souls was, but just from the fact that it could halt him in his footsteps and prevent him from approaching it, it was likely to be at least at the level of ancient sage Ziyu's inkstone. I have to take it. Otherwise, many master teachers will likely lose their lives to this artifact. Judging from the close relations between Jiang Fangyu and the scholarly young man, there was little question to whom the Jiang clan would side with should a war break out. The stronger the artifacts of the Jiang clan were, the greater the damage they would cause. He did not have the ability to deal with the Jiang clan at the moment, so all he could do was try to weaken them as much as he could. Let me give it a try. Taking a deep breath, he attempted to walk over to the seal. However, barely after taking 2 steps, his perspiration was already trickling profusely down his body. It felt as if countless needles were piercing relentlessly into his primordial spirit, making it hard for him to push on. This won't do. My soul won't be able to take it if I force my way forward. Zhang Xian hurriedly retreated a few steps from the seal, in order to alleviate the pressure on his primordial spirit. It seemed like it was indeed beyond his current capabilities to claim the seal of souls. Since that's the case, perhaps I should try doing as the stone platform says. It says that I would be able to take the seal away by comprehending the soul quintessence. Let me give it a try. Zhang Xian pondered for a moment, but no better ideas came to mind. Thus, he decided to go along with the instructions inscribed on the stone platform. In any case, it was just a matter of time before he would have to cultivate the soul quintessence, and it was likely to augment his fighting prowess significantly as well. His initial plan was to take away the treasures of the Jiang clan first, and head to a safe place before cultivating the soul quintessence, but it seemed like he needed a change of plans right now. Standing on the spot, Zhang Xian immersed himself in the Library of Heaven's Path and retrieved the compiled Heaven's Path manual to comprehending the soul quintessence. Touching the manual, he felt knowledge flowing into his mind. Gradually, his understanding of souls deepened. The reason he was able to grasp the spatial quintessence of sealing so swiftly was because he had already cultivated the 3-dan heavenly art of dimension unravel. All he had to do was cultivate the 4th dan of the technique, so it did not take him too long. It was apparent that he had taken significantly more time to comprehend the time quintessence, but it still took less than an hour. As for comprehending the soul quintessence, he did have a strong understanding of souls, and his soul was extraordinarily powerful. In just 10 breaths, he had already opened his eyes once more. Vortices suddenly formed within his eyes, dizzying those who dared peer into them. After cultivating diligently for 10 breaths, he had already successfully comprehended the Jiang clan's soul quintessence. If he fought with someone, his soul energy would become a powerful offensive option for him. At the same time, submission of the predecessors, someone has managed to comprehend the soul quintessence. Standing in the midst of the ancestral hall, Jiang Fangyo's face reddened in excitement as he watched the phenomenon occurring around him. This is wonderful. Wonderful. I never thought that the lass would actually be able to comprehend the soul quintessence so quickly. It was just a moment ago that he sent his daughter over to comprehend the time quintessence, when this phenomenon occurred a moment later. Naturally, it stood to reason that the one who had comprehended the soul quintessence was his daughter. The heavens are truly looking after our Jiang clan. With this, the fighting prowess of our Jiang clan will be significantly bolstered. As long as she inherits the heritage of our founder, even when an upheaval happens, our Jiang clan will still have the strength to protect itself. Jiang Fangyu's tense body visibly loosened up significantly as he heaved a sigh of relief. After hearing the news from the scholarly young man, he had been unable to calm himself. However, upon knowing that there would be someone whom he could count on to protect the Jiang clan, his heart was finally at ease. The individual who had comprehended the soul quintessence would be able to wield the seal of souls. Even if they did not mobilize the ancient sage of their clan, they would still be able to handle most crises by themselves. You can all start preparing for the clan head inauguration ceremony. I'll go take a look at Feifei. Suppressing the glee in his heart, Jiang Fangyu instructed the elders behind him before heading out. Yes, clan head. The elders also quickly left the ancestral hall, with proud looks on their faces. The Zhang clan had Zhang Xian, and the Luo clan had Luo Tianya. They had been worrying that their Jiang clan would be doomed to lag behind the other 2 premier clans. But who could have thought that Feifei would successfully make a breakthrough at this juncture? As expected, the talents of their Jiang clan did not lose out to anyone at all. It took around 10 breaths for Jiang Fangyu to rush into the treasure vault. The moment that he entered the hall on the first floor, he saw a young lady standing 10 meters away from a jade wall. She was still sweating profusely, unable to walk any closer to the jade wall at all. Taken aback by what he was seeing, Jiang Fangyu hurriedly rushed up to her and asked, Feifei, what's wrong? One who had comprehended the soul quintessence should be able to remain unfazed against the pressure of the jade wall. But why did it seem like his daughter was still unable to withstand the pressure? Father, you can rest easy. I'll try my best to achieve a breakthrough as soon as possible. Seeing how her father was still worried despite the reassurances she had given him, even going to the extent of checking on her after just a few minutes, Jiang Feifei could not help but feel a little irritated. You haven't comprehended the soul quintessence yet? As if struck by lightning, Jiang Fangyo's body stiffened in disbelief. He could not understand what was happening. It hasn't even been 10 minutes since I came here. How could I have comprehended the soul quintessence so quickly? Jiang Feifei was rendered speechless. Had her father lost his mind? If it was that easy to comprehend the soul quintessence, she would have already comprehended it long ago. She would not have dragged it out until then. But Jiang Fangyo's body trembled weakly. His mind could hardly keep up with the happenings, and he nearly fainted on the spot. He had thought that the person who had just achieved a breakthrough and comprehended the soul quintessence was his own daughter. However, if it was not his daughter, who else could it be? Noticing the look on her father's face, Jiang Feifei realized that something was amiss. She quickly stepped away from the jade wall before asking her father doubtfully, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" "After I parted from you, I went straight to the ancestral hall. Just a minute ago, the submission of the predecessor's phenomenon occurred. So I thought that you were the one who had made a breakthrough." Jiang Fengyu explained. "It wasn't me." Coming to understand the reason behind her father's behavior, Jiang Feifei was a little startled as well. Could it be that a member of the side family has comprehended the soul quintessence, similar to Luo Tianya? Side family. How can our side family be that formidable? Jiang Fengyu did not think it likely to be the case. With a deep frown on his forehead, he mulled deeply over the matter, but he was still unable to figure out what was going on. Shaking his head helplessly, he turned to his daughter and asked, "Did you notice anything amiss while you were cultivating here?" Jiang Feifei thought for a moment before shaking her head. "No, I didn't notice anything at all." She had been completely absorbed in trying to comprehend the soul quintessence, so she had not noticed any anomaly at all. To be able to trigger the submission of the predecessors, the person who has comprehended the soul quintessence has to be our clan member. Otherwise, there's no way he could possibly pull this off. However, is it really possible for anyone to make a breakthrough without the jade hieroglyph? Jiang Fengyu frowned in incomprehension. Even with the aid of the jade hieroglyph, not a single core member of the Jiang clan had been able to comprehend the soul quintessence in the past tens of thousands of years. Just who in the world could be so formidable as to pull it off without the aid of the jade hieroglyph? All of a sudden, a thought came to Jiang Fengyu's mind. His body trembled in horror as he exclaimed, "Could it be? This is bad. Feifei, follow me up." He quickly dashed for the stairs after saying those words. Uncertain of the reason behind her father's sudden outburst, Jiang Feifei hurriedly followed behind him. In the blink of an eye, they were already on the second floor. With just a glance, Jiang Fengyu's face turned ghastly white. A room that should have been filled with treasures had been completely emptied. Not even a shred of rat poop could be seen in the room. A thief has managed to sneak into our treasure vault. From the looks of it, it seems like the incident happened not too long ago. I have to activate our clan seal. Jiang Fengyu exclaimed anxiously. Hula! Right after those words were spoken, a jade token flew forth from Jiang Fengyu's palm. It floated out of the window of the treasure vault, and the next moment, the surroundings seemed to suddenly come to life. An overwhelming aura suddenly shrouded the entire area. With Jiang Fengyu's eye of discernment, he could tell that the treasures had not been taken too long ago. With a swift calculation, he deduced that it was likely that the thief had not managed to escape from the treasure vault yet. As long as he sealed the area with the formation and combed the entire treasure vault carefully, he would surely be able to weed that darned thief out. After sealing the area, the two of them moved on to the third floor. Seeing that the third floor had been emptied as well, Jiang Fengyu's eyebrows twitched in trepidation. His chest felt so stifled that it seemed as if it would blow up very soon. This was the fortune that the Jiang clan had accumulated with difficulty over the past tens of thousands of years. To dare steal their entire wealth. Wait till I catch you. I swear that I'll shred you into pieces. Exhaling a mouthful of turbid gas, Zhang Xian stood up. It's done. Wrapping his body with his soul energy, he walked to the stone platform at the center. As expected, the pressure from before had lowered to a level that he could endure. He took a few steps forward and grabbed the seal floating atop the stone platform. Hula! To his surprise, his hand slipped right past the seal, leaving him to grab at thin air. What? Does this mean that the seal is fake? Zhang Xian was taken aback. Due to the immense pressure emanated by the seal, he thought that it was an artifact that was at least on par with ancient sage Ziyu Zinkstone. Yet he was not able to touch it at all. Could this be an illusion? If only he had known that this would happen, he never would have wasted his effort cultivating the soul quintessence. That was 10 breaths that he had wasted there. Just as Zhang Xian was about to leave the room in disappointment, a thought flashed across his mind. Wait a moment, this artifact is called the Seal of Souls, right? Could it be that it can only be grasped by a soul? He was certain that he had felt the pressure from the seal on his soul. There was no way to fake that. Since the pressure was real, it did not make much sense for the artifact to be a mere illusion. Yet he was still unable to grasp it with his hands. Since that was the case, could it be that the seal was simply intangible in form, reminiscent of a soul? If that was the case, he would only be able to grasp it with his primordial spirit. Thus, Zhang Xian took a seat on the floor and drew his primordial spirit out from his glabella. With a sweep of his hand, he felt a cooling sensation rippling across his primordial spirit as he grabbed something tangible. He immediately knew that his deduction was right, and his eyes lit up in excitement. He quickly closed his grip on the item and attempted to pull it out. Voila! He nearly fell to the ground while trying to do so. Heavy! Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes in surprise. While the seal might not have looked big, it felt even heavier than an entire mountain. With his introspective convalescence realm soul cultivation, he was still unable to pick it up in his unprepared state. Let me see just how heavy it is, Zhang Xian thought as he took in a deep breath. He gathered his strength and attempted to lift the seal once more. Hung long long. The seal slowly rose up as innumerable surges of spiritual energy swiftly gathered around the seal, following which, the treasure vault beneath his feet began shaking nonstop. It was as if the seal served as to contain the fortune within this building, and taking away the seal spelled the collapse of the entire building. This is bad. Someone is on the top floor. On a floor below, Jiang Fangyu felt the shaking of the entire treasure vault, and his face turned incredibly livid. Knowing that there was no time to waste, he hurriedly rushed up the stairs. Knowing that the shaking treasure vault would surely draw people over, Zhang Xian knew that it was unsafe to remain in the area. Thus, he quickly kept the seal of souls into his storage ring. While the entire treasure vault had shaken intensely as he took away the seal, it did not collapse as he had expected. Heaving a sigh of relief, Zhang Xian returned his primordial spirit to his body, and just as he was about to leave, he heard footsteps sounding below. Someone was rushing over. So fast, Zhang Xian narrowed his eyes in alarm. With a flick of his hand, he swiftly distorted the space around him, causing his body to vanish from view. Hula! The next instant, Jiang Fangyu and Jiang Feifei rushed into the room. Looking at the empty stone platform, Jiang Fangyu nearly lost his mind. He swiftly diffused his spiritual perception into the surroundings, leaving the area feeling heavy, as though it had been infused with mercury. Father! This was the first time that Jiang Feifei had seen such a frightening look on her father's face, and she trembled a little in fear. Check the surroundings. It's unlikely that the thief has gotten far, Jiang Fangyu commanded with a wintry voice. Yes. Jiang Feifei nodded and rushed down the stairs. Right after the young lady left the area, Jiang Fangyu walked up to the stone platform and stroked its smooth surface lightly, seemingly unable to believe that someone had actually managed to rob the seal of souls. With twitching cheeks, he growled in anger. Just which bastard could it be? Before finishing his words, he abruptly turned around and thrust his finger toward an empty corner of the room. This wily fox. Seeing a finger art darting in his direction, Zhang Xian could not be bothered with concealing himself anymore. He hurriedly leaped away to dodge the attack. It was one thing for Jiang Fangyu's strength to be on par with Sword Saint Xing and the others, but more importantly, he possessed an extraordinarily powerful soul as well. In truth, he had already noticed Zhang Xian when he scanned the area with his spiritual perception earlier. However, he had chosen to feign ignorance in a bid to make the other party lower his guard. Sila, an attack harnessing the burning rage of a great sage expert, Jiang Fangyu's finger art tore Zhang Xian's spatial barrier apart. Realizing that he would not make it in time to dodge the attack, Zhang Xian's goosebumps rose in astonishment. Activate. Knowing that there was no way he would be able to survive if he got into a direct confrontation with Jiang Fangyu, he immediately ignited the Zhang clan blood essence within his body. In an instant, time seemed to have slowed down. The finger that he could hardly see earlier seemed to have frozen in midair, and the other party's infuriated expression appeared in high definition before him. Sensing the incredible might pulsating around him, Zhang Xian felt his hairs stand on end. He's too powerful. Even with time acceleration, I won't be able to last too long against him. The last time he saw Jiang Fangyu, the latter still had a smile on his face. Who could have thought that he would wield such frightening strength? This was especially so given the powerful soul pressure that he was constantly emanating. Even when tapping into the Zhang clan's bloodline ability, Zhang Xian knew that he would not be able to last too long. At the same time, his spatial barrier would not be of much use either. When a soul was too powerful, it would be able to suppress time and space. In the end, the problem was that his cultivation was simply too low. If the both of them had been at the same cultivation realm, Zhang Xian would have been able to stroll leisurely before Jiang Fangyu without drawing his attention at all. Knowing that he was no match for Jiang Fangyu in his current state, Zhang Xian unhesitatingly dashed out of the room. Voila! But before he could even get too far away, Jiang Fangyu's finger art broke Zhang Xian's time acceleration before shattering the spatial barrier that he had set up. The shockwave from the collision exploded into the surroundings and struck Zhang Xian's back. A sweet sensation welled up at the back of his throat, and he nearly spurted blood. Are you from the Zhang clan, or are you from the Luo clan? Jiang Fangyu asked with an utterly cold voice. That scoundrel had been hiding in the midst of a spatial barrier earlier. But upon realizing that his hiding spot had been exposed, he immediately utilized the power of time to flee. As a result of that, he had failed to even catch the other party's appearance. To think that there was a person in the world who would have comprehended both the spatial quintessence and the time quintessence. Who in the world was the other party? Hula. Paying no heed to Jiang Fangyu's questions, Zhang Xian immediately darted for the windows. What was he to do after ravaging the other party's treasure vault, if not flee? Was he supposed to wait for the other party to serve him tea? Seeing that the thief was intending to escape from the treasure vault, Jiang Fangyu bellowed furiously. Where do you think you're going? TSS La. His soul energy rippled outward and shrouded the treasure vault swiftly, forming a massive barrier. But barely after Jiang Fangyu formed the barrier, the enemy's deep voice echoed in the air. Break! Following which the barrier formed of soul energy shattered apart. This is soul quintessence? Why you? Who in the world are you? Jiang Fangyu was startled. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.